Hello. Welcome to another edition of Red Pill Rant with Professor Red Pill, Lupiter, Adam Maxwell of Liberty Rising, and Swing. Thank you for joining us. And tonight we talk about the failures of capitalism, Adam Smith's vision of capitalism in the United States, and modern capitalism as we know it. Now let's get started. Good stuff. So, how's everybody doing tonight?
Good. Everything is going just fine. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna analyze all of the different economic processes, what are their impacts on the US population and the world, and see what has been the result of this gigantic project that Adam Smith came up with.
Right
And we're going to
on.
get Swifty. We're going to get Schwendy. We're going to get Smithy. And we're going to get Smithy with Adam Maxwell. Over to you, Adam.
For tonight, I'm Adam Maxwell Smith. So it's a topic that I like a lot. I'm looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So, what
Little
are we
known
presenting?
fact, his real
Okay.
name is Adam Smithwell.
Adam Smithwell. Good stuff. All right. So, what are we starting with tonight? How are we going to start the discussion? Anarcho-Capitalism, or just go straight into the deep dive into modern capitalism?
Well, I mean, we could compare the policies and the ideas and thinking of the two greatest institutions, two greatest pillars of not just American society as a whole, but Western society. You could even say that Western civilization is built off the backs of these. It's not Judeo-Christianity, it's not capitalism, it's the economic policies of the Democrat and Republican Party, two obviously very completely different organizations with completely different economic policies, and obviously you know, these are the people we should be looking to when it comes to economics, not universities, not books, not economists, but we should be looking at the two greatest economists of our time, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and listening to what they have to say about how they're going to lower oil prices and how Kamala Harris can't drive a car.
This is true. Yeah, I mean, Biden economics is unbelievable. I mean, it's such a great modern concept. We have Obama economics, where basically you spend into oblivion, and then it was carried on with Trump economics, where you basically stimulate to infinity and keep spending and give me dats, and then Biden again with Biden economics, and then like I said, we're gonna have Trump, as you say, Lupiter. He's gonna outspend himself, and he's gonna have another Trumpian economics model, probably UBI. I definitely see UBI being a viable option in the next decline of America, as we are collapsing. Everything's collapsing upon ourselves, and capitalism ends.
A viable policy option for the state to pursue, not a viable instrument for the effective welfare of the people in society.
Look, man, I got sneakers to sell. I need this UBI. Okay, how am I gonna sell these sneakers without UBI?
I mean, the reality is, when you think about it, the UBI and the gimme dats and all of that is very important for the S&P 500. It's in order to keep commerce going. And as I pointed out previously in our previous podcast, that the spending in this QE and the stimulus to infinity basically has spearheaded the S&P to record numbers. S&P currently in this quarter has made a precedent that we've never seen before in the S&P. It's outpaced inflation. It's literally to the stratosphere as far as, outpacing inflation. We've never seen it before in history. So Biden economics works, man. You got to trust the science in that one.
I would say that go for it.
You're the Austrian economist, Maxwell. Are you familiar with this? I can't remember the name of the person, but there was a person that was promoting this idea, and there was a lot of charts, there was a lot of data, there's a lot of stuff to back this up. But basically, most of the gains of the US stock market occur within a certain period of time of the US Treasury, not the Treasury, the Federal Reserve issuing new currency it also is very strongly correlated with the increase in outstanding mortgages, which is how a lot of the credit is created. I guess we can talk about this later, but when it comes to money in the economic system, there's different types of money, and in economics we measure this from like M0 through to M4. And at the one end we have the hard currency, which is what the Reserve Bank or the Federal Reserve creates, and on the other end we have the derivative market. And we see, yes, and in this chart you would see a lot of the increases in the value of corporations in America recently in the last sort of 2-3 years. This coincided with the massive amounts of money printing that was endeavored on in order to finance the COVID restrictions, the COVID policies of the government. And most of this money, it made its way into these asset classes. And I think, Adam has probably a lot that he can add to the subject.
Before Adam begins, I'd like to just point out, I was the first one that really kind of looked into this in the group, and I pointed it out with some of the other economists that are in our group chat in the Consolidated Legacy channel. Description is, the link to the link is in the description. Best way to say it. But as you can see here, this is 2020. This line right here is a recession indicator, and that's the recession as a result of the COVID lockdowns or whatever that'll happen during that time. And you see how it crashed, and then with the QE to infinity and the Gemidats and bailouts, it skyrocketed the S&P above the rate of inflation. This little marker right here, that is inflation. So that means that for the first time, S&P outpaced inflation. And the thing is what were Adam, what was the inflation rate during COVID? What was it, like 7% or 8%?
It was all fake statistics, so I didn't really pay
much
attention.
Anyway, the official was 7%. Shadow Stats was saying probably somewhere around 30, but nonetheless, it outpaced that, like you see here. And then it dipped back down. We had a double dip recession, as you can see here. One dip, two dip, double dip recession. During post 2022, this was when we had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth that apparently the Fed and the federal government had said that is not considered a recession. However, textbooked is. Adam, what defines a recession?
2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth.
There you go. So that happened right here in 2022, and then QE to infinity began again, and
it was
the first.
I think it was Q4 and Q1, I think, of 2022, right? It was around the beginning of the year. Yeah, right. I remember all the news articles, and they tried to change the definition of inflation. Everyone just said no.
So that being said, like I said, currently, as I'll go ahead and zoom back out, we can see this is 2024, and for some reason, like we all feel the recession right now in the West. Like I'm living in the United States right now, and I can tell you that I can feel the recession. I can feel a downturn. Like right now, right around spring, end of October, into the spring, currently right now, yet S&P has hit record numbers. And I said this is a huge bubble and we'd eventually see a correction, which we did see that Trump coined as the Kamala crash. And what happened then? Anybody? Bueller? Adam, what happened then? What happened after the crash? What happened after Kamala crash?
No, I know. Donald Trump won the Nobel Prize.
He did win the Nobel Prize. But what happened after Kamala crash? What happened the day after Kamala crash? After it was coined.
Are you going to
say stock prices soared all the way back up into infinity? They went into space, and we're back. The central banks bailed out the entire global economic system to stop the short squeeze, to stop everyone having to sell off all of their assets being margin called, and prevent the global financial system from melting down. And this was after they froze all of the trades. They froze trades in all the stock markets on the planet because, the system's not rigged, guys.
They froze trading for a day, actually. When the Kamala Harris, they did freeze it. We did go over that with the Kamala crash and the Kamala effect about Japan, and that I guess you'll explain it. I just want to say what I want to say on that, and we'll get into it. But basically, what happened was there wasn't really QE. It was just that the federal government fudged the numbers even further. So it's like when you go back to Enron, and I like using Enron because that was in my my article in 2014 that I predicted 2025 U.S. economic collapse and dollar decline. That was removed twice on LinkedIn. For some reason was removed, and I didn't remove it. I didn't delete it, but it got deleted, and I didn't get any word why it was deleted. I even asked them. They said they don't know. What are you talking about? There was no article. I was like, well, I memory machined it. And I was like, you see, it's here, but now it's not here. And then like I put up a third time, and they deleted the body. They left the title, but they deleted the entire body of what I wrote. And everything in there details in specifically what we're talking about now and predicted the crash that we're in at this current time. But yeah, basically, the market's rigged. There's no point. I mean, you could put money in it and you'll probably make money off the EFT and possibly, I don't know. But me personally, I don't see it as a viable option anymore. Like a lot of these assets are teeter-tottering and like, just flatlined. And there's no growth. There's no economic growth. It's what we call a zombie economy, as Adam pointed out with the economic theory. But I call it more importantly the boomer economy, or in other words, the zombie apocalypse. So going to you, Lupiter, did you go ahead and further explain the Japan, what happened, and what really actually caused this downturn, this recent downturn?
I mean, I think we kind of went over it pretty well last time, but just for the people that weren't there, I mean,
just a refresher.
Overview, just the high level overview is that the interest rates were very low in Japan. They've been very low for decades, and they've been going down for decades. In fact, I believe they may have even been negative, at least at like the central bank level. So what was happening is people were taking cheap credit, not even necessarily Japanese people, but even Americans. They were going over to Japan. They were getting cheap credit.
Did you cut out, Lupiter?
You have a loan at... Sorry?
No, I hear him. You're correct that Japan had negative interest rates, at least at the federal level.
I think maybe he can't hear any of us again.
No, I can hear you guys. It just cut out for a little bit. I apologize. Continue. Continue. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so they were getting very cheap credit. And what you do is, this is basic economics 101. It's finance 101. It's business 101. It's called arbitrage. So if you get a low price for something in one area or in one market or whatever, what you want to do is you want to take that product, that service, and you want to sell it for more money and get profit. That's what we call profit, right? It's revenue minus expenditures. So if you're able to go over to Japan, you're able to get interest and credit for like 1%, 0.5%, 0.25%, whatever it is. And on the other hand, the rates are going up. In the West, the rates are going down. In Japan, the rates are going up in the West, and the rates are like 5.5%, 6%. You're even able to just get money from the Reserve Bank or the central bank in Japan and put it in the central bank in America, and that's a very safe way. And you put it in overnight, and you make a lot of money, right? But you can also invest in shares. You can invest in stock markets. You can invest in bonds. You can invest in derivatives. You can invest in housing, real estate, commercial real estate, all sorts of things. And that's what people were doing. They were taking money out of Japan. They were investing it in the West. And then what happened was Japan started raising the interest rates, and the West, like America, started to lower the interest rates. And so now people are being squeezed. The currencies are being forced in the opposite direction. So the Japanese yen is appreciating in value. The US dollar is starting to depreciate. And a lot of these people are starting to take big losses. And when they go and borrow like $1 million from Japan, they take that to America and they say, I need to leverage this. I need to get like 5 million, 6 million. So they're making leveraged trades. So small percentage decreases in their investments can result in huge decreases in the equity. So a lot of these people are trying to unwind these positions before they lose too much money, because at the same time the stock market was also crashing. So this was like a whole series of bad and unfortunate events, and this was threatening to unwind. I think it was, they said maybe 10 trillion, something like this, of Japanese investments in the West. And if you pull $10 trillion out of the West, this is going to destroy the balance sheets of every financial institution in the West, because there's no one with $10 trillion to buy $10 trillion worth of stuff. So this would drive asset prices around the world down to basically nothing. and this would cause like all of the financial institutions and businesses to go out of business. All the loans would be called because these banks would be bankrupt, and then people don't have the money. That's why they borrowed it from the bank. So businesses would go out of business. The whole global economy would collapse. There'd be no money. It would be just like the GFC. So everyone stepped in. That's all the stock markets stopped trading. They reversed trading. They did all these things. They said, we're not allowing these shares to be traded. We're not allowing the share price to go down because this is going to be bad for the economy. And then the banks came in and other people came in, and behind the scenes they did things, and now everything's back to normal.
Yep. Yeah, it's QE to infinity, manipulation, cooking the books like Enron. And as we know with Enron, this was before the dot-com bust. Enron was well known for the worst accounting malfeasance in the history of business, or the history of capitalism, if you want to look at it that way. And then there was Bernie Madoff during the 2008 crisis, and that was the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of capitalism. And then we have the what's his name, the kid of the Bahamas. Do you guys remember his name with the crypto?
Do you remember the name of the crypto?
Fredman, whatever.
Sam Bankman.
Sam Altman. Sam Bankman-Fried, yeah.
Yeah, Sam Bankman, yeah. He outdid all of them by becoming the largest Ponzi scheme, accounting malfeasance, and corporate fraud in the history of the world and capitalism, and outdid everybody. So like we're getting many first. We're getting many first in this modern society with this crony capitalism, decline of the American dollar, decline of the West, decline of Western capitalism. And it's finally culminating to everybody is trying to, it's a race to the bottom. Everybody is trying to literally outcompete everybody to be the worst and most conniving and destructive forces in capitalism. It's irony because these people are well respected. Bernie Madoff started the NASDAQ exchange. He was one of the founding chairmen. He was a well-respected, received many accommodations and a lot of different praise for his contributions to Wall Street and finance and trading. And same thing with Enron. It was considered the cutting edge and innovative way of trading. I think one economist had referred to Enron as the future of energy, the future of investing. So yeah, it is what it is. I mean, can you really trust these people? Is this a failure of capitalism as a whole?
I think we should jump to Adam. I think we've been teasing Adam for too long, and he
go Adam, all yours.
Oh, sorry, I've just been dealing with a little terror. So I've been listening. It's been very interesting, Lupita. I agree generally. And we talk about capitalism, and we talk about modern capitalism, and it's not a free market system because we have central banks, we have the Federal Reserve. You're talking about how the Federal Reserve allows this counterfeit fake debt credit system, which is not free market capitalism, and it's this artificial fiat system. Fiat. The traditional definition of fiat is decree by authority, but I've redefined it, or I've given it a bit of clarity to call it abuse of power. So this abuse of power, this decree of authority, this fiat currency system, which is counterfeit and is debt-based, meaning it also means that it allows debt to drive. It creates this credit system, and it's this credit system that is harming society. We were talking earlier about UBI. UBI is a wealth redistribution. Professor said it keeps commerce going. It's important to note it doesn't create any value, and in fact, the existence of UBI may destroy value, as wealth redistribution is a tax, is a disincentive for business and enterprise and things that create value. And if you can say, well, that's not true, but you don't have to tax to pay money out because we can just print money. and you say, right, well, it's this system of printing money, of $35 trillion US debt, not accounting for unaccounted financial obligations like social social credit. What's it called? Social security, which makes the U.S. debt.
It's public pension fund or Social Security. It's very similar in all Western civilization or Western economies. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So the problem with modern capitalism is not capitalism. It's not the private ownership of the means of production. The problem is the state ownership or state manipulation over the means of production, which are facilitating the conditions by which the largest multinationals are incentivized to be reckless or incentivized to do all kinds of financial manipulation of the financial system that's not the real economy. And this is something that we're seeing. Why is Russia able to outcompete the United States? Not just outcompete the United States of America, they're able to outcompete all of NATO. Why? Russia's economy, it's the largest economy in Europe now. It wasn't when the war started, it was Germany. But okay, it's the largest economy in Europe, but there's only 140 million Russians, and they're all poor and backwards, and they don't have washing machines. We, the West, we are strong industrialists. We have the industrial capacity, right? No, we've shipped that off decades ago and decades in the making because financially we can make higher margins shipping that off, and financially we can inflate our system because we get dividend income, and then we invest that dividend income elsewhere, and we buy up the houses, and then we import people. We do all these things that aren't benefiting society, and it mostly all comes down to the root, which is central banking. Now, I say all this, and just before I move on, I do wish to note that I do recognize that even pure capitalism, there are problems. Like it's a dynamic process, and dynamically in the long run, it's perfect. But in the long run, we're all dead, says the disgusting economist Milton Friedman. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
John Maynard Keynes. Milton Friedman says we should end the Fed. So that there are problems with capitalism, but the truth about modern capitalism is it's not capitalist, it's corporatist, or in the words of Vladimir Lenin, to create a central bank is 90% of the way towards communizing the nation.
There is one thing that also that Marx had said. He said that socialism was the transition of capitalism into communism. And like I said, through UBI, through regulation, through central banking, that is the scheme, that is the tools, the mechanisms in order to transcend from modern capitalism or laissez-faire capitalism into a communist state. And that's what we're seeing now in the West and the Western economies, is this transition from capitalism to, or actually it was anarcho-capitalism in the United States, when it was firstly founded, to a modern capitalism, then to crony capitalism, then to a socialist system with QE to infinity central banking schemes that the founding fathers were very against, other than like Jefferson in particular was against it, and Hamilton pushed it, President George Washington and Adams encouraged it, and that's the crisis that we're in now. We are, Adams is, if you actually research Adams as a historical figure, a lot of his writings and his letters, he does sound like a socialist, very much so. Before we knew what Marx was, or the idea of modern communism, President Adams was writing extensively on this and theory. But nonetheless, the reality is that I brought up the crash map for you that you were talking about with Russia. I'm going to go ahead and share it again. And this is the crash map. The colors indicate the amount of GDP to debt ratio. And those that are in red are basically third world economies as far as debt to GDP ratio. They're like basically what you would call, I guess, to put it a PC way, living ghetto rich, living, spending to oblivion, basically, and not worrying about the consequences. And then the countries with green or dark green are countries with a low GDP to debt ratio. And as you were talking about, Adam, Russia is on the map there. That is the greenest country in the world as far as debt to GDP ratio. So that is a very interesting situation that public debts, the Western economies in particular, as we could see in Europe here.
So,
Sorry, let me go back.
what's the
Go
source
ahead.
of this map? Because I thought Russia was around 20%.
This is like CIA fact book, different
which
sources.
Yes, which year? This is modern.
It's probably like recent. It's within the last 10 years.
Sure,
because you can
sure.
see,
So the public debt in Russia in 2022 was 18.9%, and they are deficit spending to fund the war, but not much. So
anyway, so the reality is that Russia has the lowest GDP to debt ratio. Japan has the highest, and America and obviously Canada is not too far off. And you can see Central and Western Europe has unbelievably high levels of debt. And what's preventing EU from going to over 100% as a trading zone is basically Eastern Europe and Northern Europe, who have more sound economies and emerging economies. So what you're seeing, what I have indicated, is you're seeing emerging countries developing a much quicker pace and with lower debt ratios than the West. And the West is basically they're plagued with basically the entitlements, the QE, the pension funds, the public pension funds, medical, Medicare, or like a universal healthcare system that's failing, and rising inflation rates and government spending as well as corporate spending into oblivion. This I don't think this is a recent map. I will pull up a more recent map as we continue on with the podcast, but I believe this was pre-COVID, pre Ukraine conflict. But it's still, I mean, regardless, is historically, like within the last 10 years, that this is a very significant map to understand.
The
what's going
figures
on.
the figures may vary, but the fundamental remains unchanged for the past decade. Yeah.
Other than China and India, because now China and India are at 100% debt to GDP ratio, and that's because of further trading with the West, with Western economies, they're more dependent on Western trade, which is why I think they're. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you just elaborate on that point? Explain why trading with the West incurs debt.
Trading with the West incurs debt because these countries are emerging economies and they have to compete on a global scale with more established industrialized nations. The competition, and then they obviously China is a communist state, so all of the corporations within it are state owned. So as the dollar continues to rise in comparison to other state currencies, these countries have to spend more money in order to compete publicly. So they're losing on the exchange. They're losing through when they're buying products on the exchange. And it all comes down to currency wars and trade wars, like we saw in World War II. I mean, if that gives you kind of yeah. Anybody else want to add?
And this is why one of the things that China's doing, and this ties into the EVs and a lot of the sorts of sectors that they're not just EVs, but what China does is China likes to be vertically integrated, whereas a lot of Western corporations, again, they're sort of quasi-independent, even though they're all sort of semi-controlled by institutions like BlackRock. They are kind of quasi-independent, and BlackRock doesn't have, and these institutions, they don't have the sort of control measures that the CCP or the CPPC or whatever they're called in China, that they have over their corporations. They actually have in China. A lot of people don't know this. In China, you have you have a board of directors, and then below the board of directors, you have a CEO. Below them, you have different managers, just like any Western company. So people in the West are very familiar with this structure. But what they're not familiar with is that adjacent to that, there's a political structure. So there's a board that's appointed by the CCP. There are managers at many levels of the corporation that are appointed by the CCP, and these people are paid by these companies, and these people have the authority to override the economic leaders of this institution if they're making decisions that are not in the interest of the CCP or the China state as a whole. And they have the same structures in their military. In fact, this goes back to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union introduced this when they had their revolution, and they didn't trust the military leaders of the army. So what they did is they put their own political leadership. Now, these people, they're educated in philosophy, they're educated in ideology, they're educated in economics and things like this, but they're not educated in how to run a business. They're not educated in how to fight a war. So these people, they don't really know too much. So they kind of leave most of the stuff to the generals. They leave most of the stuff to the CEOs. But when they see something that they think that the party doesn't like, that's when they step in, they intervene. So they actually have a lot of control over these institutions and over these companies. And everything's kind of consolidated and centrally planned. So what they do is they then arrange that the resources that they use to make these cars, they're not going to the London Metal Stock Exchange and buying lithium, because who knows, maybe the lithium supply won't be there. Maybe one day the lithium price will be up, maybe one day it will be down. Makes it very hard for them to run their business, run their electric car industry. So what they do is they go over to China. China goes over to Africa. They calculate on a spreadsheet how many cars they want to make, how much lithium they need to extract, and this sort of thing. And they go out and they plan with their own mining corporations where to go to get the lithium, what places to put the mines, how they're going to lay the mines out, what investments needed with the mines. They work with the governments in these countries. This is where you see a lot of the China Silk Road type, Belt and Road Initiative stuff. And, they're figuring out not just all the stuff around how much lithium and resources they need to fuel their industries. They're also talking about, what sort of infrastructure is needed to support that industry, what sort of infrastructure is needed to get those products and those resources from Africa to China. And also on the flip side of that is, any cost of doing this, any cost of business, they want to pay for that by shipping in an equivalent values worth of Chinese products. So this is a way not just to get the resources they need to fuel their manufacturing sector for not just their domestic consumption, but also their exports. But it's also a way to funnel their export and excess production capacity into these markets and displace potential Western producers. And so a lot of the times when China is producing things, they're not buying the resources off of the global market. They have their own market. They have their own economy. And so you've kind of got multiple economies. You've got China, and then you have the global economy. And so this is the direction they're going. And then this actually offers a lot of advantages to them, because then if there's a shortage of some sort of material, a lot of other firms that they compete with, they will have to pay huge price premiums to make their laptops or their EVs. But China is able to produce these vehicles and produce these laptops, and they don't have any supply chain disruption. So, they do very well in certain market conditions. Of course, if the price of these materials goes down, then this favors the Western system more than the Chinese system. But, the China, they've got deals with their own corporations to extract these resources, and they're extracting these resources and buying them at pre-agreed prices that they're very comfortable with. So, for them, they don't really care what the markets do in terms of like the metals markets and things like this.
Yeah, and to elaborate here, the last slide that I did present here, this is the most recent data. So this is up to date 2024. As you can see, we can let's take a look at the old. I do have it. Okay. So looking at the old, this is from like 2014 era. Like I said, it's within the last 10 years. So 10 years ago, this was the debt ratio of the world. And this is what it looks like today. Huge difference, right? You can see that China and India's at 89% debt to GDP ratio. And that it was green at one time, and now it's almost completely red. It's like brown. Brazil went up, Argentina, Russia remained under, that 17%, like he had said. They're relatively have a relatively lower debt to GDP ratio. Oceanic actually became a little bit more. Their debt to GDP ratio kind of evened out. But Japan's at 259%, which is they're bankrupt. That's a
what we're
bankrupt
seeing
country.
here is
Yeah,
we're seeing
Go.
from countries like Japan, because it's a lot of this debt, as we're saying, a lot of this debt, it's actually money that's being borrowed at a very low interest rate, and it's being invested in other Western companies and other Western markets, asset markets, house prices, commercial property, things like this. So it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of misleading for Japan. But regardless, the overall point is, not only is this a bad thing often for these countries, but also what you see is, when you see a lot of debt being accrued in these places, this money's going somewhere, right? There's always a flip side. Just like when you had Sam Bankman-Fried and he lost like billions of dollars, right? That money wasn't lost. Okay, when we say the word lost, we mean that he made negative profit, right? When you say lost in the English language, it makes it sound like we don't know where it is. We know where it is, right? It's gone somewhere. It's not.
It's still
It's
it's
not
still
that
in
no
the
one has
economy.
this money. Yes.
Yeah,
so the flip
it's still in
side
the
is that
economy.
if you make a negative profit, someone else is benefiting from that, because in double ledger bookkeeping, money doesn't disappear. Money just moves from one account to another account. It moves from one part of a ledger to another part. So when he goes and makes a negative profit of, say, $2 billion, someone's made a positive profit of $2 billion. So when these countries go out and they borrow all this money and they have 200% of GDP in debt, okay, on one person's balance sheet, that's 200% of GDP worth of, or whatever that is, that's $50 trillion, 60 trillion in America or something, worth of debt that Americans have, the government has. But then the flip side of that is there's $60 trillion sitting in someone else's bank account. You see what I'm saying? So what happens when you have that sort of money is, and that sort of debt, and therefore that sort of asset base and that sort of money sitting in accounts, that money then finds its way into adjacent markets. So you're actually seeing now these countries in Southeast Asia that are surrounded by India and China. You're seeing a lot of money from India and China flowing in to these places, because these people that have accrued all of this money, because this money's borrowed, it's spent, and it's going into someone's business, it's going into someone's pockets, whether they're a worker, whether they're a business owner, whatever it is, whether they're making money on the stock market or the financial markets. And these people have a lot of spare money. So the return on investment now is very low in these high debt countries, because there's so much money chasing very few market opportunities. The economy's not really growing. So what's happening is that this money is looking for places to live. It's looking for places where it can grow and have a family and have a life and reproduce, right? So this money's finding its way into the emerging markets. So just as this debt is making it unaffordable to live in the West, it's making it unaffordable to live in Japan, China, India. It's now funneling its way into Southeast Asia and other parts of the planet, and it's pushing up their asset prices. It's pushing down the returns on investment in those places, and it's creating economic problems for those markets as well. And this is something that they talk about a lot in Oceania. They talk about Chinese investment in housing and how this is pushing up housing prices. It's not just Chinese investment, it's investment from everywhere. It's investment from all these high debt places, and it's also investment domestically by a lot of money being printed, both by the Reserve Bank through government deficit spending, but also by policies at banks to issue loans to people.
Just a minor clarification point there. You're right that the debt is not merely abstract; it's spent, but it's spent by the ruling class and the capital class, not by the people. And as you say, and it's driving up prices, it's causing things to be unaffordable, and it's kind of fomenting socialist sentiments demanding greater wealth redistribution. For example, UBI, which is the cause of the problems and money printing is the cause of the problems, and it continues to perpetuate it. So it doesn't benefit people to that the federal government or the Federal Reserve, that's not the federal government, but they may as well be, is printing all this money. I've got more to say about the founding fathers, but if there's someone else wants to jump in, I'll yield.
So what you're saying basically is that you have this politicians that are coming forth to talk to these disenfranchised populations, and they're telling them, hey, do you want wealth redistribution? Yeah, we have something for you called UBI. You're going to love it. And these people are falling for the trap, and it's just keeping the whole thing in a cycle.
It's less of a cycle, more of a alien dialectic, right? It's moving in the direction of communism. So again, we started this discussion, the truth about modern capitalism, and we said we used to be capitalist, and then we had the central bank, and then we had 1913, and after that, it's no longer capitalist because it's no longer laissez-faire. Let it be. You have an organized conspiracy manipulating the entire economy. And again, I've got some great quotes about this, and you can study the history of the Rothschild banking family if you want. There's many definitions of socialism. My favorite one is socialism is when the government does something. And so the government, they're looking for more spending, more welfare, and then they're pushing it towards UBI, and that's all in the direction of, it's all socialism, all in the direction of communism. So it's not a cycle, because we're not going back to laissez-faire free market capitalism. We're moving towards communism.
Yeah, 100%. It's a globalized communism. But there are, like I discussed earlier in the Telegram group, the Gonzalo Lira Legacy group, link is in the description. We were talking about this earlier today. I believe, like I said, you're going to have, I believe capitalism or what we know as modern, the crony capitalism or meritocracy is over. We're at the end of the age of modern capitalism, and we're headed towards basically a pseudo-socialist, global multinational type model economically. And then you'll have like pockets of countries that are anarcho-capitalists, starting with like Georgia, who first started actually using and implementing Adam Smith's idea of capitalism through an anarcho-capitalist type system. And when Saakashvili took over during the Rose Revolution and the 2000s, early 2000s. And you see now what that country has done with this anarcho-capitalist type system. They went from one of the poorest countries in Europe to now one of the largest growing economies in the world for a small country. Not only for a small country, but for just an emerging market. Their GDP percentage has increased 10% plus year to year for the last decade. Now they're in the top 5 east to do business in the world. A lot of investment, a lot of money pouring into Georgia. They're trading with everybody. So they're trading with Russia, they're trading with the EU, they're trading with Iran, they're trading with China. Now they're trading with the Middle East, and they're considering trade with Africa. So this is the new type of systems that you're going to see. You're going to see like Argentina recently adopting the anarcho-capitalist economic model. And you're going to see these smaller countries start adopting these models, these emerging markets, while more post-industrial type societies that have a huge, that have like basically this golden calf, or they have this, they have the monopoly of currency or trade, like the United States, like Canada, like UK, like European Union. They're going to be spearheaded towards a capitalist multinational type system is what I believe. But I don't know. What do you think on that, Adam?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I was looking up the founding fathers. I was looking at some quotes, and most of them seem to be, as I understood, against paper money. Paper is Thomas Jefferson, 1788. Paper is poverty. It is only the ghost of money and not money itself. And I posted 5 quotes in the Gonzalo Lira Legacy group, all to a similar effect.
Right on. So one of the things I did notice from history, reported history with paper money and currency, is in the colonies they had an inability to get actual coined currency, because apparently the British did not allow their coined or minted coins to be shipped to the United States. So a lot of the currency that the early stages of American capitalism used was a lot of foreign market currency or coin currency, minted currency, until they started developing their own minted currency, from what I understand. So they were using a lot of like Spanish coins, a lot of coins from like France and all over, and anything that they could use to barter. They did try this model with paper currency then, like a fiat currency. And every time that they did implement some type of fiat currency in the United States, it ultimately just failed. And they used one currency, and then they came up with another currency to barter because of the lack of minted currency in the colonies. And it was just a disaster.
Yeah, so if you were to go back sort of into feudalism or sort of like proto civilizational states, like pre-civilizational states, and by civilizational states I'm talking about city-state models like Rome, Carthage, all the Greek city-states. Those were highly urbanized economies with huge amounts of international trade. They had fleets, they had standing armies, they had all these things. They were very powerful. They had huge populations. They had lots of infrastructure, aqueducts, things like this. So those were, very much like modern day countries. But in between that period and now, you had feudalism. Before then, you had sort of just random people living in villages and things like that. Back then, people used like credit-based systems, right? So they had barter, they had credit-based trade, often amongst relatives and things like this. And then at the end of the season, they would sort of reset reset all the transactions, and they would just, if there was a little bit of a surplus or a little bit of a deficit somewhere, they would just wipe it out. And they would assume, people would just kind of assume that because it's family, right? So they just kind of forgive some of the debt to an extent, but they assume that maybe one year I'm going to be in a bit of a surplus, maybe the next year I'm going to be in a bit of a deficit, right? So when you're trading amongst friends, you're trading amongst family, it's a little bit different than when you're in sort of like a civilizational sort of economy. When you're in a civilizational state, there's no community. Often people aren't related to each other. It's often cosmopolitan, multicultural. You're living in a big area. It's hard to have those connections, and then that's when you have money. That's when you have either gold or you have some type of like physical paper-based currency that emerges, right? And between sort of that period of time, the civilizational time, and today, you had feudalism, and you kind of went back because that was a collapse of the civilizational state model. And most of sort of late stage feudalism was the reconstitution of the civilizational state and the division of the planet back, or Europe back, into civilizational models, civilizational state based models that would then go overseas to get resources to compete with each other. So I think that if you're talking about like a capitalist, someone that wants to, and there's different types of capitalists. There's people that make money on the financial markets. There's people that go out and they do, they create products, right? There's capitalists like Henry Ford that build factories that make cars. So these are different types of people. It's different types of capitalism. But if you're either of these, really, it doesn't matter. You want currency, whatever type of currency it is, whether it's gold-based currency or whether it's paper-based currency. Because if you're trying to build a factory, you've got to understand a factory requires a lot of resources. A business requires a lot of resources, and most people, even businesses, even Toyota, if you look at Toyota, it's the largest car company in the world. It's got the highest market valuation. It has a lot of debt, because even Toyota, even though they make a huge percentage of the world's cars, they don't have enough resources themselves, and their shareholders, their investors, they don't have enough resources to fund their business. So what they need is they need to get money from somewhere else so that they can finance all of this. So this is why we have banking. This is why we have some sort of money. whether it's gold based or whatever it is. But ultimately, if you're some sort of an entrepreneur, you're some sort of a capitalist, you want to get as much credit as you can, as cheaply as you can. And if you're trying to compete, if you've got one state, one civilizational state, and you're trying to compete with another civilizational state, the extent to which you're able to compete with them is going to be predicated on the quantity of credit and the price of credit. So if you have a low quantity of very expensive credit, you're going to have a very small basis for capitalists and entrepreneurs, economic managers, financial market speculators. They're not going to have many resources to build factories, to businesses like Toyota. They're not going to have many resources. Those resources are going to be very expensive. And so you're going to see a lot less economic activity taking place. Whereas if you look at like other countries, maybe the Soviet Union, for instance, they have a policy of extending unlimited credit at no interest. And, you know, even if they're losing money, they will go out and they will build factories and they'll try and, you know, create things, even if from a pricing perspective, from a price signal perspective, even if it doesn't really make sense. And so I think that, you know, ultimately, if you're trying to abandon, you know, like a fiat currency system and go towards a gold system or even something before gold, I don't think there's going to be enough credit. I think maybe this works for developing countries that don't need credit because maybe they don't have big businesses that, like, you know, need billions, tens of billions of dollars worth of. Even the latest semiconductor foundries that they're building in America, they need $120 billion to be built. There's no way you could do this in a gold-based system. I don't even know what the value of the world's gold is. It might not even be much more than that. So this is why you have to have a fiat currency system if you want to have big business. But if you're a consumer, maybe, you know, you're not benefiting from it, or you're not getting the same benefit from it that the factory owner is getting, because the factory owner, he goes out, he gets $1 trillion of money, he gets $1 billion of money. This is decreasing the value of your money, which is negatively affecting you. But then on the flip side, you have a Toyota car factory that's making cars, so now you have cars. So it's kind of, you know, I mean, to me, to be honest, I think in economics, I think that the money debate, I think, is kind of missing the picture.
I have the graph up for the stockpiling of gold, and this is the gold breaking down. This is from 2019 metric. It may have changed quite a bit in the last. Yeah, go ahead.
Again, can you, before you go into it, just what's the source? Because there's the official statistics.
Hold on. The source is the IMF from Statista. It's a very reliable source for all intended purposes. But yeah, going back to it, like I said, the stockpiling of gold. This is from 2019. This is the current. This is supposedly the amount that these reserves are currently have in the amount of metric tons. But continue, Adam. Sorry.
Yeah, just the official statistics on national stockpiling of gold is just speculation, and it's manipulated by the countries. Tends to be massively under. They just don't want you to know how much gold they have. So China has probably much more gold than that. Russia as well. I don't know. I imagine lots of places. Some may want to say they've got more gold than they do. I don't know what the situation is in Argentina, but I've seen a lot of people saying, "Where's Argentina's gold? Did they ship it off to England to attain interest?" I have no idea.
Most of their gold's probably sitting in a bank in Israel or in America in the Federal Reserve, where most, like, a lot of Germany's gold's sitting in the Federal Reserve. A lot of European countries, gold is sitting there. It's been there since World War II. Because it's, you know, obviously they feel that America is a safer country, obviously, because we have two oceans that separate us from the rest of the world, and it's well protected, they believe. But if American dollar collapses and the U.S. economy goes to shit, then what happens to all their gold? We're back to the World War II scenario.
So gold's important, especially on a national level and individual level. Gold, silver, precious metals, the currency of the elite. I don't trust the statistics, but they may have some value in general levels.
Yeah, I mean, generally, the gold is a lot of these Federal Reserves. Like I said, you have to understand they're a business at the end of the day. Like the United States Federal Reserve is a semi-private organization. So a lot of the gold they lease out to different gold brokers. It's being moved constantly from place to place. People lease it from the government at a price. Banks will use it. It's, I mean, we don't know exactly. You're right. I mean, we don't know the exact amount, but this is the official amount based on the IMF, what has been reported. And for all intended purposes, this is probably the best data point that we can present for our viewers today.
So I got some data here. So I have a data from Google, and it says here that the value of all the gold, and this I believe is I don't know if it's up to date. It could be a 2018 source. It's not clear, but they say 13.7 trillion US dollars. And then to give you scale, and this isn't business assets. This is all assets, including property and things like this, like housing and stuff. I doubt it includes like speculative financial derivatives, because this would be like quadrillions of dollars. But the value of all the world's assets is $500 trillion. So yeah, with fiat currency, with gold, you can only finance like 0.5% of the world's assets. So this is why we have fiat currency, right? Because you just can't finance. You just can't finance a modern economy with gold. Like, there's just not enough gold on the planet.
It's impossible. There's not enough gold. There's not enough gold in the world to be able to provide sound currency at this point. If you did, then, you know, I mean, the reality is that if you want a sound currency, you're going to have to do like what OPEC in the United States did, where they backed a currency with the petrodollar. There's a lot of oil. It's a highly used commodity, and it's one of the better indicators of a currency, or sorry, a commodity to back it. I mean, cryptocurrency could be another indicator, but the reality is that when countries issue currency, they should at least be backing it by either, you know, commodities that they have, and, you know, they could trade that commodity for debts, public debts, because that's what I ultimately think is going to end up happening, is that countries with these high debt to GDP ratios, like the United States, like, you know, like India now, you know, like even China, they're going to end up having to either trade their commodities in place of the debt, or they're going to have to do like what what Russian czars had to do, where they sold Alaska to the United States to pay off debts. So, I mean, these are things that are going to happen. The maps are going to change. Like I said, very soon, like next couple of years, within the decade, you may be living in a territory or a country where you will no longer be a member of that country anymore, and you'll have to sell your assets, or you'll have to immigrate to another country that accumulate, or that assumed your country, either by debt or by war or by revolution internally.
I think they need to unwind this. I think, because obviously, like, it's sort of intuitive, right? Like, if you're in the West, you can see with the cost of living, you can see that, you know, housing is just, it's too expensive to afford to either buy or rent. You know, people are spending too much of their money on rent. They're spending too much of their money on corporate profits and things like this. And that's leaving very little actual money available for people to buy real products and real services. And so this is resulting in a lot of harm to the institutions, to these specific corporations that are trying to sell these products. And we're seeing you know, sales volumes decline, although the monetary figures are very high. That's only because they've, you know, massively increased the price of all of these goods. And I think that they need to kind of unwind this process, so that, because ultimately, if this process continues, the working class are going to continue to be squeezed, and they're going to have less and less money available after rent to buy food, to buy consumer products. And it's kind of like what happened in Rome. And what happened in Rome is that they replaced workers with slaves, similar to what we're doing now with globalism, with insourcing, where you bring the slaves into the country, or outsourcing, where you hire the slaves and have them do the work overseas. And the problem with hiring slaves is that, you know, slaves are really good because they make cheap products. Of course, if everyone does it, you're not making any extra money because you've just decreased the cost of doing business, and increased the barriers to entry, increased the amount of money you need to have in your business to buy the slaves. But other than that, I mean, the slaves themselves, they're not buying anything. So you're killing the purchasing power and the consumptive power in the economy.
Right, and that's what North Korea is doing right now because the country is broke. There's documentaries you can go look on, just Google it or go look on YouTube. There are documentaries where North Korean government is actually they're leasing their people, their skilled people, doctors, craftsmen, or tradesmen, to like developing economies like Kazakhstan and different places, and they're having them work for money to send it back to North Korea to keep the country afloat. And this is a very interesting situation, in a human trafficking and geopolitical situation, because America has pretty much embargoed them to the point where now they're using their largest commodity, their people, as ways to create to generate funds internally.
Don't you think that's interesting though? Because look, on one hand, we're not allowed to trade with North Korea, right?
Mm-hmm. No, not at all.
But
North Korea,
what
Syria,
we're
Cuba, Iran, these all have active trade embargoes, and now Russia currently. And even though that
we do trade,
I get into that. I get into that as far as the Russian oil. We were actually buying Russian oil. Biden was buying Russian oil through the Ukrainian conflict for the first year, and then apparently India decided they were like, well, they got caught because I had mentioned it, and I was like, we're still buying oil from Russia, right? And other people had mentioned Joe Slinte, and then Trump was talking about it, and then they were like, oh shit. So then they used India as a proxy, so they had India buy the oil, and then they were using Greek oil liners or oil rigs to ship the oil from Russia to India to the United States. And it's like, come on, man, just it's bullshit, dude. You guys just stop bullshitting, man. We're gonna figure it out eventually. We're not stupid, But go ahead. Sorry.
So we don't buy. We're not allowed to say hire, I don't know, 10,000 truck drivers from North Korea, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, the thing is like North Korea, like I said, we can't if North Korea were to send people to America to companies like that, they would just declare refugee status and they become American, which could be a strategical plan. I mean, that's what Carter did with Fidel Castro in Cuba, and Castro decided to clean out his jails and prisons. And he said, "Hey, you're free to go. You can go to America." And he sent all of his garbage to our country. So yeah, why not, dude?
Well,
Biden, honestly, Biden, if you're listening to it, Kamala, if you're listening to this, we need to go. It's a humanitarian issue. We need to tell Kim Jong-un and North Korea to send their people to the United States, because if they can't take care of them, we'll take care of them for them. And it's very important, and that we need to clear out their mental institutions. We need to clear out their their prisons, and they need to come to America because we need the revenue. We need a tax revenue. We need a labor. Go ahead.
I mean, this could be a very quick way to boost the American GDP, right? Make the line go really big. Make the line physically bigger, make it a better green, make it taller, make it longer, make it faster, harder, all these things, right? But we could take all of the world's people, all of the criminals from all over the planet. We could take all of the mentally ill people, and there's probably 100 million, 200 million of these people, 300 million of these people, and we just put them all in America. And
More than
imagine how
that,
much higher the
probably a
GDP is gonna
billion.
be.
There's 7 billion people in the planet, if not more. We don't know the number. I mean, we could take literally we can double our population in a very short period of time just by taking all of the world's like garbage, like all of their criminals, their child molesters, their rapists, their murderers, and we can make America great again. You know what I mean?
I think some Middle Easterner wrote that. They graffitied that on the Statue of Liberty, which was built by some random French person. So, I mean, obviously, this is American values now, right? This is what it is to be American, is to take in the world. It says like to take in the world's filth.
Pretty much, send us your poor, send us your. That's what it says. I'll go ahead and present it. We'll present it, but continue.
And look, I'm just saying, right? Like, I just think it's weird, right? We can't trade. We can't bring in. I can't bring in 10,000, 20,000 North Korean truck drivers, but I can bring in 10,000, 20,000 Uzbekistanis, Tajikistanis, Kazakhstanis, and not just Kazakhstanis, but Mongolians and people like this. So over to you. You want to read this out?
Sorry, I gotta unmute. I gotta unmute myself. Sorry. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teemage shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. So this is a message, the plaque that's on the Statue of Liberty when it was presented to the United States by France. And this is the message that they said. And like often you'll see the liberals or the progressives point at this message that this is the message for, think about it this way. I mean, you have a billboard, right, in your financial sector, because New York City is called the Big Apple or the Empire State for a reason, because that's where that's where most of the trade is done in the United States, and globally for that matter. So I mean, this is a plaque that's sitting on your most well-known monument in the country that represents you as a country, and they're basically saying, hey, send us your dog shit garbage people and to our golden palace, and we'll take care of them. We need plenty of slaves. That's all to me, what this interprets is, because all this is poetry, obviously how it's written, it's very poetic. Poetry is interpretive but it's a very interpretive language. So to me, what this interprets as, please send us your garbage, basically send us your slaves, and we'll make them our slaves. And that's the message that I get from this.
And guys, if you don't have like an English literacy degree, which is probably most of the people on the planet and most of the audience, refuse is a fancy, posh, rich person word that basically means garbage, which includes not just domestic household waste, construction waste, industrial waste. It also means human excrement.
It's Norse French. It's a Norse French word from 17th century France, I believe. Meaning basically garbage, trash. Yes.
Which includes human excrement specifically.
100%.
So they're also
100%.
saying, send us your poop. Send us your wretched poop from your teeming shore. And when they say teeming, they mean overcrowded. Okay, this is like a way where you would describe, say, a country of a population density like Bangladesh or London back in the time, or Paris. And these are overcrowded. So they're saying, hey, you don't want to live in an overcrowded cesspit with open sewers? We love that. Send that over there. And going back to what we were saying about North Korea, I just think it's interesting because I think this ties in. I think, yes, officially, we're not buying Russian oil. Well, you know what? Officially, we're not hiring North Korean truck drivers. But do you know who is hiring North Korean truck drivers? Uzbekistan,
the developing world,
Kazakhstan, yep. Mongolia. And do you know who is driving trucks in America?
Same people.
Tajikistanis, Uzbekistanis, Kazakhstanis, yep. Mongolians. So these countries get North Korean truck drivers. They pay them half of what they would pay their truck drivers. And then they send their truck driver over to America and they take the money back and they charge like $50,000 a year and they're paying like $5,000 to North Korea. And so we've got this deal where we give $50,000 to Tajikistan and they give $5,000 of that to North Korea. And we're funding North Korea by giving these countries like $50,000 so they can send their truck drivers over here. So it's a very interesting system, just like, we're buying Russian oil, but they have to, use it in Saudi Arabia. So they'll, import that 100% of their domestic oil consumption. They'll import 200, 300% of their domestic oil consumption, because keep in mind, guys, what you don't understand is when you operate a refinery, the refinery is consuming a lot of the oil to provide process heat to heat the oil up so they can distill it and extract the various different types of liquids at different temperatures from the fracking column. And this process uses a lot of energy. So normally they'll use their oil to do this. But if they're able to import Russian oil at $40 a barrel or $30 a barrel or whatever it is, and sell it to us at $60 or $80 a barrel, then they're making a $20, $30 margin a barrel. What they will do is they will take the oil, that they were using, the 2 million barrels a year that they were using to put in their cars. They will take the 4 million or 6 million barrels a year that they were using to refine their oil. They will import like 8 million barrels of oil a day, and they will mark that up $20-$30, and they will ship all the oil they would have used, not just for their cars, but to refine their own oil, and they will send that to us. And if they get greedy, they will then lie and say that they're extracting more oil, and a lot of the extra oil that they're extracting will just be rebranded Russian oil. So, this whole, we're in such a financialized, globalized, international system. The whole idea of sanctions is a joke. Like, you can't sanction a big country. You can't even sanction North Korea. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work because, you know, at the end of the day, it's a global, like, America depends on multiculturalism and their multinationalist system. So it's like an octopus with like multiple little tentacles, and these tentacles go into these different countries, and they try to siphon wealth or commodities or people, for that matter, to try to sustain this growth. And you saw the same thing with Rome, where all roads lead to Rome was a very similar situation. And if you look at the Soviet Union, like Moscow, all roads lead to Moscow. Like, basically, if you talk to anybody from the old Soviet Union, they'll tell you that everything was basically, the Soviet Union would go into these different countries, like Georgia, for instance. And Georgia is rich, and it's a very rich agricultural state, as well as it's an active seaport, and they have a lot of different things that they could provide. But, you know, it's a wine country also. Like, they're very well known for their wine and clean water, or fresh water, mineral waters. But like, Russia, for some reason, thought that they would be the ideal place to grow their tea. So all of the tea in the Soviet Union was coming from Georgia, apparently. And you know, they I guess Ukraine was also a very similar situation, where they were dictating what they grow and what type of products were sent or come from Ukraine. And this is how the Soviet Union operated, and it all went to central Moscow to be distributed throughout the rest of the Soviet Union. So the model was that basically this shit was all this commerce was done, or sorry, all of the industry was done in different regions, different sectors of the country or of the empire, and all the stuff would be sent to Moscow, and then they would distribute it. But they were, you know, they were like, "Yo, trust us, we'll make sure everybody gets a piece of the pie." But the reality is that the people in Moscow, it's like the Hunger Games. The people in Moscow were well fed and well taken care of, and the rest of the world or the empire was basically given scraps. And that's basically how the Soviet Union operated for the longest time.
And that's how every country operates. Of course, every country, we talked about this before, where we talked about multicameral and unicameral states. These are states that have one major city or two major cities that sort of dominate, or three major cities that dominate the country, versus, you know, states that have a federal system where they have, you know, dozens, hundreds of cities, right? That are all sort of roughly equal in size, maybe with a few big ones. Like, for instance, in America, you've got a few big cities on the coast, but America, there's no real single seat of power. There's lots of seats of power. There's two main groups of seats of power on the East Coast and the West Coast, but there's also Florida. There's a lot of stuff going on in Florida. There's a lot of money and rich people living in Florida. There's a lot of power and economic activity, not necessarily high status politically connected people, but there's a lot of economic activity taking place in Texas. There's centers even like Chicago, Detroit. I mean, these are less relevant nowadays, but yeah, America is definitely a multi-cameral state. But when you have, you know, like, you still have the capital, you still have the Hunger Games city, even though it's kind of less pronounced. And whenever you have that, you're going to have the royal court, and always the royal court is the first people to be fed. It's not the peasants. The first people to be fed by the king are the people in his court, and then it's the people in the city that he lives in. You know, he wants to keep those people happy because those are the people that matter. You know, who cares about these Georgians? You know, Georgia's like 1,000 kilometers away. There's a whole mountain range between them. There's an open tundra between them and Moscow. They don't really matter. I mean, if they get mad, they get angry, they burn stuff down, it's not an issue. If the people of Moscow get angry, the leadership, they have a problem. But look, here's the thing. All countries operate on the Hunger Game model, and all countries, they'll have one or two firms in each industry. And what happens is, if you were to take any of these countries and break them up into a bunch of different parts with their own currencies, their own borders, all of these flows of money, all of this trade, it's going to stop because there's borders, there's financial regulations, there's financial currencies, there's issues with transporting the stuff. And that's what happened when you broke the Soviet Union up. All of these economies collapsed because all of that, they were part of a highly integrated system. And when you separate that system and break it up into parts, it doesn't work. And they're only now just recovering.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and like you see, like Florida was Florida was an agricultural state. Like it's, you understand the Department of Agriculture in Florida is one of the largest administrative agencies as far as wealth and size in the state of Florida. And the thing is that we were producing a lot of beef and a lot of agriculture or citrus, mostly citrus and citrus beef and sugar cane. And the thing is because of this recent influx of people coming in from outside of Florida during COVID lockdown and the housing prices skyrocketing to infinity, we turned from a agricultural state to a real estate state, you know, or like a commercial and commercial real estate and commerce and residential real estate. So people started buying up these houses and the property value started to skyrocket, i.e., causing farmers and agriculturalists to basically have to sell their land off because they could no longer compete because of the high property taxes and insurance rates. So, and ultimately, what this did was it caused a Hunger Games type scenario where there's no more agricultural output, and the Department of Agriculture is now losing its funding and losing a lot of the commerce that they were in charge of because now real estate and finance and the Department of Finance is now overtaking Department of Agriculture as far as the amount of commerce that's being conducted. And the other thing I'd like to add is that in Washington D.C., the D.C. metro area is if you look at it on a map, I'll see if I can bring it up, but that is the most expensive zip code for real estate as well as the salaries of income, and that surrounds Washington D.C., the capital. That's where some of the wealthiest people in the country, in the United States and the world for that matter, that's where they reside is in the D.C. metro area.
I'm going to bring up a video. I'm going to send it to you. It's going to take a bit of time, but if someone else wants to jump in.
I know. We didn't hear anything yet from Sweden. What's up, brother? You got anything to add to the discussion? I think
The
Adam
whole
might be
system,
gone.
it's building on so many, it's being built, it works in so many layers of usually that it's gotten to the point in which, yeah, like it's made most of the population sort of effectively because of what Lupiter was mentioning earlier on the spending going down because of us being turned into practical slaves for the mass production of this mega corporation and products. There is no way to compete for middle class business people. Like if you're like a middle class person, unless you're providing extraordinary unique value, nobody's going to buy you because you're being outcompeted at all fronts. So this generates like bigger societal ramifications. That's an observation that I had to make. Yeah.
So I went ahead and I posted a how rich is each state, and this is a data. I don't know exactly when this data was. It should be rather. I think it's rather recent. But you can see they have the low per capita personal income to high per capita personal income, and you can see the states with that are darker. There's a higher percentage of wealth, personal wealth within these regions. And you see in New England area, like here in New York and Pennsylvania and Virginia, being 18, number 18. You see where all of the wealth is. It's in the predominantly the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California. Alaska's number 4, the northern Midwest, and then New England. And you can see how the rest, the flyover country, like in the Midwest and like the West, High Plains West, and then the Deep South and the Southeast, the personal income is very low. Yet what you see, like in Florida, for instance, like I said, with the high increase the rapid increase in property values and rents and things of that nature has skyrocketed to the point where it's no longer sustainable to live in Florida. So I want to go to the next slide here. Largest companies by revenue in each state. And you can see this breaks down the multinationals, the corporations that are predominant in each state. And you can see here in California, Chevron Oil Company, Texas, ExxonMobil, Nike in Oregon, Costco in Seattle, Home Depot in Atlanta, FedEx, Humana, and these are the largest corporations in each state. And you can, and this coincides with the GDP ratio. So like GM in Detroit and so on and so forth.
I want to go back to that previous slide. I think that previous slide was quite interesting. If we could just go back one slide.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that this is quite misleading because, first of all, I think that, if you're in a lot of these coastal places where they have very high GDP per capita, I think a lot of that is captured and adjusted by the human farmers. You've got these human farmers, they own rental properties, they own banks, they're farming the cattle, and, they're just adjusting their pricing so that they're getting more money out of you. So if you're in a place like Silicon Valley, maybe you're making $500,000 a year, but it doesn't feel like you're that much better off than people living in the middle of nowhere in America, because yes, you're going to have some things that they're not going to have. Like, you're probably going to have a more expensive car, you'll have a nicer phone, but like all of your basic necessities, like your food costs are going to be insane, your rent's going to be insane, like your taxes are going to be insane, and you're just going to find that you don't have any money left at the end of the month, or at the beginning of the month. Just when at the beginning of the month, your rent's due, you pay your rent, you pay your whatever, you go out, you do your month's worth of grocery shopping, you come home, you paid your car bill, and you're looking at your wallet, and you're like, well, there's not much left here.
It's much worse. It's much worse than being a startup, because even startups, they had like 1/3 of the year free. They didn't have to be working all of the year. But like for you, you're gonna have to be working more than a serf, way more.
That's true. Yeah, like if I make money in my country, straight away I'm paying, say, 33% income tax. I'm paying 15% GST, and then I go and buy something. I have to pay the GST again. I pay the GST when I sell something, and I pay the GST when I buy something. So right straight away I'm losing half of my income, and then I go out. I pay rent, and then the rent's going to be some huge percentage of my income. The grocery bill is going to be twice as much as it would be in Europe. And so even though I'm in a high wage country, I mean, all the money just disappears. But I think the other reason why it's misleading is I think that nowadays money is not so relevant, income is not so relevant. I think most people that have a lot of money, most people that have a high net worth, they're making money through capital gains, they're making money for investments, they're not making money for income. It's not taxed, it's just all assets and things that they own. And nowadays you could be like a low paid worker, and you own a house, you're going to have a much higher standard of living, you're going to be in a higher socioeconomic class than if you're a high paid person, but you're in a high cost area where you got to understand, some of these areas you're paying $3,000, $4,000, $6,000 a month in rent. So you might be making 100, 200, 300K a year, but your living costs are also higher. So you don't actually have the disposable income. Whereas someone that lives in that area and makes a low wage in that area, but owns their own house, they don't have that $6,000 a month coming out of their pocket for living costs. That person is going to be at a much higher socioeconomic class than you, even though they may just be doing a low class job like truck driving. They may be like doing janitorial services or whatever you can think of, right? But that they'll be, that they'll be able to go out on the weekend and go eat at the restaurants, and you will be, eating one meal a day, cooking your own food, living it in your house with all the lights turned off except for one room, and catching the bus because you're broke.
Yeah, you can see this visualization here. It's a pretty good indicator. This is from I believe this is rather recent. I don't know how, because like I said, the average income in Florida, for instance, is around 46,000. I think it's 42,000 currently in 2024. So you can see what this is, how much you need to buy a house in each region of the country. And you can see here in Miami, it's 63,000. I think it's substantially higher now. But yeah, I mean, just at 42,000 alone, I mean, you can't buy a house in Miami, you can't buy a house in Orlando, you can barely afford a house in Tampa. These are the metro areas. And like I said, they're the lowest. Like Florida has some of the lowest paid salaries in the country, and obviously, the average person, it's unsustainable. They can't afford a home in Florida. It's just not in the cards. Now, if you look over here to California, San Francisco, it's 147,000 is what you need in order to buy a home. Los Angeles, 95,000. San Diego, 100,000 a year. That's what you need nominal income. I think that's before taxes. And you look at the cost for the average home in these regions, and that's why California has a high. They have a high homeless rate. They have an unbelievable homeless rate in California. So I mean, this is unsustainable. This is the economy at its best, I guess. The American economy at its best in capitalism, modern capitalism.
Not financial advice, but people, they will say, I'll just keep it brief, Adam, and then we'll go to you. But people ask what they should do. Young people ask what they do, or people give advice to young people what they should do. And I'm just going to tell everyone here that all the advice they're giving, it's bullshit, right? They tell you to go work or get a career or do this or don't go to university, go to university. I mean, first of all, one person's telling you one thing, the other person's telling you the opposite thing. So, straight away it's bullshit, right? Because, they can't both be right. Obviously, at least one of them has to be wrong. Well, the truth is they're both wrong. And if you go out and work in any of these places, look, these are what the wages are. This is what you need to earn. You're not going to get there by working for someone else. You're not going to get there as an employee. So if you want to have a life, you want to have a house, you want to have a family, then you have to have an economic plan for yourself that doesn't involve being a wagee, being an employee, going out and working for someone else.
I do have that video you sent. How to make 2.7 million
I
in a
think
year.
before we go there, I think Adam really wants to say something, and then maybe
All
Sweden.
right, go ahead, Adam.
I just wanted to not really. I think it's important that you do work for someone for at least a little bit, just so you get the feel of business and thing. Unless you've got a great idea straight out the gate, or you've got the skills you can immediately put to work, blue collar. But generally, there's a lot of value in experience education. So it's not to say never work for someone, but don't work for someone. Like, it shouldn't be your long-term plan as a career. You should enterprise and build your own things. And I just want to say that the reason house prices are so expensive, the reason they've been growing massively, especially relating to income, comes back to the credit cycle, central bank printing, and these massive, basically government investment funds, BlackRock, State Street, and the other one, Vanguard. These are why the asset prices are so inflated alongside the quantitative infinity.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, there's lots of different ways you benefit from working for people, routines, meeting people, socializing, understanding how this type of industry works, building connections, understanding how employee relationships work. There's so many benefits. There's like an unlimited list of benefits. So I agree 100% with what Adam's saying, and I think we both agree with this. It's worth doing it for those benefits. It's worth doing it for those reasons. It's not worth doing because you need money, unless that's your sort of last option that you have, or the only option that you have. And then, of course, do what you got to do to, feed yourself and pay your bills. It's just that, you're not going to be able to earn enough to cover the actual cost of living ever by doing it. So again, it's just something you do for a bit, but you need to figure out whatever it is you're going to do, something else that you can make money with.
Yeah. I sent you something, Professor Red Pill. I tagged you on the Telegram group. It's about the president of El Salvador commenting on the American tax system. I want to get your output, like your input on that.
You sent it to me. Where
I
is it?
tagged you in Telegram. Yeah.
All right, hold on. Here it is. Okay.
The problem is high taxes. They always tell me that the problem is high taxes, but they're wrong. Of course, high taxes are extremely high here in the United States. I give you that. The real problem is not the high taxes themselves, but the fact that they are not even really funding the government. Not even those high taxes, higher than a lot of places in the world, not even those taxes are really funding the government. So who's financing the government? Government is financed by treasury bonds. And who buys the treasury bonds? Mostly the Fed. And how does the Fed buy them? By printing money. But what backing does the Fed have for that money being printed? The treasury bonds themselves. So basically, you finance the government by printing money out of thin air. Well, so if the government can print unlimited amounts of money out of thin air, why do they collect taxes? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking. The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not.
What's your take on that?
Interesting. Yeah, it's pretty standard. That's kind of like the Gonzalo Lira was talking about the petrodollar. I mean, that's how the dollar stays strong, is they use the petrodollar to prop it up, and then obviously issuing treasury bonds to keep the currency from deflating. So there's different mechanisms the Fed does, because like I said, it's a semi-private organization, and this is just the tools and the tricks that they do in order to keep their legitimacy and their power.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes down to it, I think that people know that borrowing money, say if you're borrowing money to buy your groceries, that's a bad type of debt. Like a lot of people, they don't have a problem with debt, but they understand that there's like good debt and there's bad debt, right? Or they at least understand that there's bad debt. And bad debt is when you go out and you buy shit you don't need, and then you have a big amount of interest that you have to pay every week or every month, and you're burdened by all this debt. And that's what America's doing. They're doing bad debt because they're going out and they're borrowing money not to fund infrastructure and investments. They're going to bring money back. They're going to produce value, and they're going to make America richer. They're going out and they're borrowing money so that they can pay for Social Security, because they want to give handouts to people. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're down on your luck or whatever it is. But, when that's killing everyone else that also have bills and expenses and things that they want to pay for and lives that they want to live, and they're being murdered so that someone else can get free shit, I mean, then, that's too much.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the other thing too is the hedge funds, and like I said, the pension programs. I just posted, or this is the one that you sent me, Lupiter, Tucker Carlson. I might play a little bit of it just to kind of get an understanding of what's going on. But I say this many times about Wall Street and Main Street, and the fact that you can't tell the GDP or how an economy is doing, or how the U.S. economy is doing, from studying the data as far as GDP, or studying the S&P, or studying like what the Fed puts out and the different metrics and things. You really have to know what the economy is doing in the United States by looking at Main Street, looking at the average American, and looking at these rural flyover countries like we showed the map, and these less affluent cities that aren't really considered economically viable, because this, at the end of the day, the backbone of the United States economy is based off of these smaller rural areas that produce the products that are sold on a global scale and domestically. I got, here he is, I'm gonna add Swin, sorry. So like like the agriculture that's produced in the Midwest, and like I said about Florida, with the agriculture that was produced but is no longer being produced because the farmers can't afford to continue to raise cattle and to grow crops, because the property values are too excessive. The cost for labor has increased with the minimum wage standards. These different things in the economy that culminate to downfalls, economic shortfalls of being able to run a small business. So we'll go ahead and start this, and we'll see what Tucker Carlson is talking about. I'm going to put the closed caption on, so those that are watching.
Tree seems to have shriveled up and died. Take a trip on Route 2 in Maine sometime and count the boarded up paper mills and abandoned houses you see. Or head down Route 23 in Michigan or Ohio and consider the empty factories ringed with barbed wire. You'll see a lot of them. Outside the coastal cities, scenes like this are everywhere. This is your country now. Shuttered car dealerships next to defunct restaurants, across the street from thrift stores and methadone clinics. That's America. Community after community. Desiccated, empty husks with nothing left. Huge swaths of the United States look like that now. So what happened? Well, a lot of things happened. Some of them are complicated and hard to change. But one of the big factors in this slow-moving disaster is the utter transformation of the way our leaders think about the American economy. During the last Gilded Age, 125 years ago, America's ruling class may have been ostentatiously rich, and they were. Go to Newport, Rhode Island for proof, if you like. But it was still a recognizably American class. Tycoons accumulated fortunes, but they also felt some obligation to the country around them. Steel tycoon Andrew Carnegie famously built stone libraries around the country for the edification of people beneath him. John D. Rockefeller and many other so-called robber barons set aside huge portions of their wealth, and in some cases their property, to make this country better. Yellowstone, Acadia National Park, etc. Maybe most significantly, in January
the Tucker's gone.
It's nearly impossible to imagine a big company doing anything like that today. Attitudes are just too different. Your average finance mogul looks at workers merely as cost to be reduced or eliminated entirely. Private equity isn't building a lot of public libraries these days. Instead, the model is ruthless economic efficiency. Buy a distressed company, outsource the jobs, liquidate the valuable assets, fire middle management, and once the smoke is cleared, dump what remains to the highest bidder, often in Asia. It's happened around the country. It has made a small number of people phenomenally rich. One of them is a New York-based hedge fund manager called Paul Singer, who, according to Forbes, has amassed a personal fortune of more than $3 billion. How has Singer made that money? We made a lot of it by purchasing sovereign debt from financially distressed countries that were in trouble, usually at a massive discount. Once a country's economy regained some stability, Singer would bombard its government with lawsuits, a massive public relations campaign originating here in Washington sometimes, until he made his money back with interest. The practice is called vulture capitalism, feeding off the carcass of a dying nation. In some ways, it's not so different from what Singer and his firm, Elliott Management, have done in this country and to this country. Over the past couple of decades, Elliott Management has made billions by buying large stakes in American companies, then firing workers, driving up short-term share prices, and in some cases taking government bailouts, insult to injury. Bloomberg News once described Singer as, quote, the world's most feared investor. And that tells you a lot. No one's even pretending Paul Singer's tactics are good for anyone but Paul Singer and his fund. Consider the case of Delphi, the automotive parts supplier. During the last financial crisis, a consortium of hedge funds, including Singer's Elliott Management, purchased Delphi. With Singer and the other funds at the helm, the company took billions of dollars in government bailouts paid for by you. Obama's auto czar compared those tactics to extortion, but they continued anyway. Once they had the bailout money, the funds moved most of Delphi's jobs overseas and then either cut retiree pensions entirely or shifted the cost to taxpayers. With later financial commitments at home and cheap factories abroad, Delphi's stock soared. According to investigative reporter Greg Palast, of the 29 Delphi plants in operation when the hedge fund started buying Delphi's debt, only 4 were still operating in the United States by 2012. That means tens of thousands of unionized and white-collar workers lost their jobs. Paul Singer's hedge fund cashed out for more than $1 billion. See how that works? Well, some countries, including the United Kingdom, have banned this kind of behavior. It bears no resemblance whatsoever to the capitalism we were promised in school. It creates nothing. It destroys entire cities. It couldn't be uglier or more destructive. So why is it still allowed in the United States? The short answer? Because people like Paul Singer have tremendous influence over our political process. Singer himself was the second largest donor to the Republican Party.
The Biden administration finally agreed to ban Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance from receiving any more
Party in 2016. He's given millions to a super PAC that supports Republican senators. You may never have heard of Paul Singer, which tells you a lot in itself, but in Washington, he is rock star famous. And that may be why he's almost certainly paying a lower effective tax rate than your average fireman. Just in case you're still wondering if our system is rigged. Oh, yeah, it is. Tonight, we want to tell you a little more about how Paul Singer does business. The story begins in a small town called Sidney, Nebraska, population 6,282. 2 hours outside Denver, Sidney is the longtime home of the sporting goods retailer Cabela's, which sells fishing and hunting gear. In October of 2015, Singer's hedge fund disclosed an 11% stake in Cabela's and set about pushing the board to sell the company. Cabela's management, apparently fearing a long and costly fight with Singer, announced it would look for a buyer. Now, at the time, Cabela's was a relatively healthy company. It was posting nearly $2 billion a year in gross profits off $4 billion in revenue. There didn't seem to be any immediate need to sell, but Cabela's sold anyway after being pushed. So 1 year after Singer entered the equation, Bass Pro Shops announced the purchase of Cabela's. The company's stock price surged. Within a week, literally a week, Paul Singer cashed out. He bought the stock for $38 a share. He sold it for $63 a share. His hedge fund made at least $90 million up front and likely more over time. But in Sidney, Nebraska, it was a very different story. The residents of Sidney did not get rich. Oh, no, just the opposite. Their community was devastated, destroyed. The town lost nearly 2,000 jobs. A heartbreakingly familiar cascade began. People left, property values collapsed, and then people couldn't leave. They were trapped there. One of the last thriving small towns in this country went under. We recently sent 2 producers to Sidney, Nebraska to survey the wreckage there and to consider what happened. Our producers talked to more than a dozen former Cabela's employees. Almost all of them refused to speak to us on camera, fearful of legal retribution from the famously vicious Paul Singer. But off camera, they told us their story. Here it is.
Sidney is, it's a great place to be.
This is Sidney, Nebraska, a small town 2 hours outside of Denver. For decades, a sporting goods retailer, Cabela's, kept its headquarters in Sidney. As the company grew more prosperous, so did the town.
Cabela's was the keystone employer. Our motto forever was small town values big time opportunities.
But that motto was turned on its head when Elliott Management Corporation, that's a New York-based hedge fund, managed by billionaire Paul Singer, took an ownership stake in Cabela's.
When we got the news this company is coming in from New York City and buying a huge stake in Cabela's, that shakes things up.
At the time, Cabela's was making more than $1 billion a year. But Paul Singer's firm sensed it could make a quick buck by driving up the stock price by forcing a merger. The once thriving town of Sidney lost everything.
I cried the second I got the phone call. I couldn't help it. I bawled.
That's how a longtime Cabela's employee reacted to news that she was losing her job.
I had something good going. That was my future. And now I don't really know what my future is.
Probably looking at around 2,000 jobs.
2,000 jobs gone?
Yeah.
Sidney was devastated.
He ruined it. A good American town and just destroyed it.
Tim O'Connell runs the town's lumber yard. Before the merger, business was great.
We were just buried, with business.
Now his customer base has collapsed.
How many new homes have been built since Cabela's and Bass Pro merged?
In the city limits here, there have been one. Last year,
house.
One house.
Before Paul Singer's hedge fund put Cabela's in its sights, Sidney was experiencing a building boom.
We're going to build a new housing subdivision to meet housing needs. All these great things were happening, and instead we are working our tails off to try to figure out a way to survive.
For the people of Sidney, it's been a disaster. Those who want to leave Sidney can't go. Housing values have collapsed, tethering them there. For those who want to stay, it's almost impossible to find a job.
How long did it take you to find a new job?
It took me just shy of 5 months.
And is it as good as your old job?
No, not even close.
As Sidney collapsed, Wall Street cashed in. Paul Singer's hedge fund sold out before the merger was even complete. The fund made nearly $100 million.
They don't care. They don't care about rural Nebraska, small town.
I hope Paul Singer is proud of what he did. If money is that big of a god to him, it's a pretty sick human being.
Well, as we were doing that story, we were warned repeatedly by people around Washington, don't criticize Paul Singer. That's not a good idea. And as that package...
So, like that being said...
Tucker's still going.
I can't believe you're doing this.
No, I got it. It's good. Thanks for coming. All right. So what do you guys think on that?
Singer. I wonder, he born in 1944 in New Jersey in a Jewish family.
I think he probably comes from a family of famous singers. That's what I'm gonna assume.
New Jersey, okay.
Because I don't know how much we can say on the stream, but when we were finishing watching it, Tucker Carlson was just kind of talking about how there's certain people, certain singing families and things like that, and he was told that he shouldn't talk about them because they're very powerful, right? These people in the music industry, and you can get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. This is what happens when the state just can have like no regulations for allowing this to happen. It's just if you want to completely dissolve all of this employment positions, all of this part of the economy, you can go ahead and do it. There is no need to reformulate it or anything. It's up to the market.
What was the point you made? This is what happens when the state
doesn't have a regulatory framework to deal with situations like this. So like he just sold the whole thing off, right? And they solved it. They solved the whole operation. There was no reformulation of the operation that was put forward, just completely abandoned.
Yeah, that's generally what happened. Just the point that I wanted to put, like I talked about earlier with Florida, is like my neighborhood in particular, where my mom's home is, and it's worth quite a bit of money, and it's a very upscale neighborhood in the Central Florida area. What had happened was during the COVID lockdowns, is these houses literally doubled or tripled in value, and the people that bought the houses originally, they sold out. They sold their house as soon as it skyrocketed. They were like, "Yeah, I'm gonna pull out as soon as I can," and then new people came in. And the problem is the people that came in, they basically borrowed money that they didn't have, and they wanted to live the lifestyle of these homes that were traditionally like doctors, lawyers, and well-to-do people in society. And the people that bought the homes were truck drivers, teachers, working class people. And it's like, and they paid literally 3 times what these doctors, lawyers, and like well-to-do people, business owners had bought the houses originally for. And they were like, they're not very dumb. These people are the educated and hardworking people of society. Both are in general. But these people are the movers and shakers, and they're the ones that know that this is not sustainable. So they're like, I'm going to pull out now because this house will never be worth this amount ever again. But continue, Looper. Sorry.
I just think that these people are not as smart as they say they are. I mean, I think they want to tell us that if you're from a singing background, you're a great singer. That you've got like a high IQ, you've got a history and like a culture of like education. I mean, some of these people that are from singing families, they're very well educated. They've got a lot of degrees. They've got a lot of you can't just go and be a singer without having these connections, without having these degrees and this background. So I mean, I think it's ridiculous too. I mean, I can see Adam thinks that the whole concept, like everything these singers are telling us, I think it's fake. I think they're making this stuff up. I think there's dodgy stuff going on behind the scenes. But I think, look, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, Professor Redpill. I mean, if this was an Anglo operation, it would have been a much cleaner operation. It would have been a much better operation. So if it was you and me, if we were going in there, I mean, we would have made I'm just saying, like, I mean, I don't want to like gloat too much for the audience, but we would have made a lot more than $90 million. I mean, I don't know how this guy walked out of this deal with only $90 million. I mean, it seems like there's some, extreme level of incompetence going on, because, this establishes 2,000 jobs. You know what, the median wage in America, it's something like 40, 50,000, isn't it? Is this correct?
Yeah, it's roughly it's roughly 40 to 60,000, depending on the region and the city.
So if we just, for the sake of argument, because there's 2,000 positions, we just say 50,000, 2,000 times 50,000.
Average 50.
Yeah. That's $100 million. So he disestablishes $100 million of annual operating expenses in terms of payroll. There's probably some other expenses, other employment-related expenses, payroll taxes, things like this. So let's just round it up and say that, you know, if you include like taxes to the municipality, state for your payroll taxes, you include pensions, you include the cost of the building and other sorts of things, maybe, you know, the IT support and stuff, maybe 120 million a year of savings that they've created through this merger. So he creates $120 million of savings with the PE ratio of the stock market being 20 times. This is $2.4 billion. How does he walk out of this with $90 million? When he creates $2.4 billion of shareholder value like this, I don't know. I mean, I think these people, do they have some sort of mental illness? Do they have like, but these guys, they've fucked it up. They've done the whole deal wrong. And not only that, but if, you know, they're outsourcing other parts of their operation, they could probably save another, you know, at least 50% of that, you know, that's $3.6 billion. They come in, they do some marketing, they promote, you know, a narrative around growth behind the company through increasing margins, increasing prices. It doesn't matter, you know, what, you know, these are forecasts, so whether or not it turns out this way, it doesn't really matter. I mean, in a deal like this, you could maybe walk out with $5 billion through business process restructuring, through you know, reforming you know, your operations, increasing pricing, branding, things like this, making these fancy lines, these forecasts where you show that there's going to be this growth trend and you extrapolate it out into the future and then you discount it. And this is what people that actually know what they're talking about in the finance industry are doing. These guys are like, they're amateurs, you know. So first of all, I think, you know, there's two arguments. I think, you know, there's the argument that this should be illegal, because what they're doing is they're destroying this community. I think the other argument is that this should be illegal because, yes, they're destroying the community, but it's embarrassing. It's giving vulture capitalists a bad reputation because, you know, I think that we would make much better vulture capitalists than these people, and we would make hundreds of times more money than these people. And I think these people are giving a bad reputation because they're making vulture capitalists look pathetic. They're making them look like losers by barely making anything out of this deal.
100%. 100%. I mean, the thing is, going back to a case that I studied in law school, that I talked to you on the Consolidated Legacy channel. Link is in the description. You know, about the eminent domain in the United States. Previously, the founding fathers, they put eminent domain in legislature in the laws, because, you know, the property, you know, that was bought for public use. So like governments could buy property if they felt that there was basically a public good or a public use to that property. And that was the legislative intent for eminent domain. Well, during the bubble, the housing bubble and the derivatives market, the CDOs, and the early 2000s, the legislation changed. They went to the courts, and private companies wanted to purchase land and properties for development. And the argument was that it was for the public good, but originally this was intended for government use, to build like schools or like railroads or roads or infrastructure to help support commerce, right, for the benefit of the community or the society. Well, now corporations argued that, well, no, corporations need the same power so that they can basically make shitloads of money in venture capitalists, you know, like in vulture capitalism, like as Tucker Carlson has explained. So they changed the law to now include private corporationism is allowed to basically steal people's property. And there was a case in particular up in New England where there was seafront property where these homes, or like these people were living in these, like, you know, craftsman homes that were maybe 100, 200 years old. And they were like, well, we want to buy all your property. And they're like, no, we don't want to sell it because, you know, you can't buy it because, you know, we have right to it as right to property, private property. And the only way that it could be sold or taken is if it was for public benefit, like if it was the government taking it for a project or something. So what ended up happening is that, like I said, they went to court. The court ruled that they had the right to steal their property and give them fair market value for it. Well, long story short, when the 2008 crisis happened, and the bubble happened and the market took a shit, Basically, this property, they bulldozed all these people's homes over. They had to relocate during the peak of the market. They got fair market value for the property, and they had to go buy another house that they maybe didn't want to buy. That this house was probably inherited from a family member, or it was purchased. They were like, yeah, I want this house, and like I've lived here for my whole life, and now they have to buy a new cookie cutter house. Probably wasn't as well built as this house, and basically, the project failed. So all of these houses were bulldozed, they were torn up, they were decommissioned, and this property sat vacant for like I think 5 or 10 years. It probably was still vacant today, until recently in 2014 when the real estate market went back up. But the reality is that this is where private corporationism destroys communities in a nutshell. Anybody want to add anything? What do you think, Adam?
I can't add much comment. Correct. All very insightful. The comment I was going to make was a few minutes ago that I was reading Singer's Wikipedia profile, and he's behind a lot of things that I know about, but I didn't know about Singer being behind them. I've heard of Elliott Management, but not Singer. Paul Singer.
I think they're related to the Musks. I think what was it? Musk was it Alan? Is one of these two things that refers to it's some sort of foreign language, like some sort of European, Middle Eastern type language or something, but it refers to like a strong oak. And so I think there's some connection between the strong oak family and these singers.
I don't get the strong oak.
Interesting. Yeah, you're talking about Musk, like his name is like Strong Oak or something like that. Is that what it means? That's the
in some foreign language. Yeah. And there's a lot of connections. I mean, I see that. I think he has dealings with these sorts of people as well. So there's a lot of connections. I don't know why there's so many singers in the finance sector, but
Singer was behind Twitter.
Oh, was he?
I go to his. We go type in Dorsey into his Wikipedia. Activist investment. Elliott Management took a stake in Twitter. Singer pushed to oust Jack Dorsey and control 4 seats on the board after Dorsey announced he would move to Africa. A deal was reached that gave Elliott Management a seat on the board and left Dorsey as CEO.
Interesting.
That's 2020, 2021.
That's the same Dorsey that looks like he looks like a dirty wizard, right?
I suppose.
Hold on, I got a picture of him. Hold on one second. Let me find him. The dirty wizard guy. Yeah, this is a picture of the dirty wizard.
Okay.
I mean, seriously, if you were going to invest in something, or if you're going to do business with something that looks like this, I mean, you would probably have to have your head examined. He looks like somebody that's like that like is cooking meth in his basement, and somewhere in the Midwest. I mean, I don't know about, this doesn't look like a CEO of a major Fortune 500 company. So, I mean, if you were Elon Musk, the man of oak, why the hell would you buy a company that is created and managed by someone that looks like they're making meth in their bathroom? You know what I mean?
If you pull up a picture of him in 2014, he looked a lot more professional. Say he's a multi-billionaire. He's the former CEO of Twitter from 2015.
Okay. So he's a multi-billionaire meth. He creates meth and he makes billions of dollars from.
Look, once you get over $1 billion in America, you're allowed to make meth in your bathroom. You're allowed to make meth in the corporate headquarters of your corporation. You're allowed to screw hookers in the courtroom, when you're supposed to be in the courtroom. You just tell them, look, I need a couple of minutes. I'm busy, just come back to me, and then the judge, they'll just wait for you. You get these sorts of privileges. This is part of living in a capitalist society and being an oligarch. Okay, so he doesn't need to shave, he doesn't need to wear clothes, he doesn't need to do, he can do whatever, and he's sort of immune. Like, this is why Mark Zuckerberg, like, at some point, I this is all alleged, but at some point they actually replaced him, or he turned into a robot, and he's only wearing like fake human skin. And this is why he's allowed to do it. I mean, other robots don't have legal rights. They're not US citizens, but he is a US citizen despite being a robot.
Interestingly, he's also, I'm sure we all know, he's behind Square, who have now, or I didn't notice this, but 3 years ago they renamed to Block, and I think he is presently the founder and chairman of, maybe executive chairman of Square Block. Stupid name, but yeah, fair enough. It's the block of a lot of payment things.
So when do you think that Zuckerberg became an android? Do you think he was originally human before he transitioned, or is this kind of like, I'm just interested in this.
I don't know. I mean, it's possible that he was always a robot and that he had like a human that looked like him, and it's the other way around, and then he just kind of used his like human puppet less and less. But I think that he sort of transitioned as he got money. It's very expensive when they're born like as a human and they identify as a robot. It's very expensive to undergo these processes, and so this is probably something he did over time as he got some spare money, as he accrued lots of wealth, and he was able to pay for it like on an installment plan.
Interesting. Yeah, like
Where
I said,
are
I
his
can't tell.
ears?
I mean, we're wondering because I mean, like you look at a picture of him on the right when he was not a robot, and then you look at a picture of him on the left when he became a robot. It's kind of it's as plain as day that we can see that that Zuckerberg is a robot. He is an AI, maybe an android. I don't know if they just said, hey, we're just going to make a robot replica of him. We don't know. It's something we need to further investigate.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, this could be a CIA operation. It could be a Mossad operation. It could be a CCP operation. Like, we don't really know. Like, we don't know the details. Who's behind this? It could just be something he's interested in personally.
Would you Google Mark Zuckerberg young photos, and we could just scroll through them?
No, we've already got young photos. The one on the right is him from college. He's wearing his Harvard sweater. That's his
so he's
his
19
Facebook picture.
because he dropped
Dude,
out.
I went to college with the guy. The guy was a major douche, man. Nobody liked him on campus. Like he was like one of those weird like he was a creepy dude. But anyway, like
Do you think this
Go
was
ahead.
part of a deal he made?
It's very
like
possible
when
he was like, because a lot of these like geeks in college and high school, they like think about like they want to like date, they want to make a robot girlfriend, and they like they're really into like Tron and like these like Matrix style movies, and they're like into like robotics, and they want to become like a robot and all of this, like, so maybe he was the wealthiest, or I guess he was the wealthiest youngest entrepreneur in the world in history of mankind and capitalism. And I think he had enough money where he's like, you know what, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna become a robot. And I think he went forward, he went full robot, he went full retard on it basically.
Because I'm just wondering, because at the same time that he launched his product, the the government, DARPA, shut down their program, which was exactly the same thing. So there's a lot of people that speculate maybe he got the software code, maybe he got the whole thing from the government, because a lot of the initial money from it actually also came from the government as well. And I'm just wondering, was this part of the deal when he agreed to be the front that would run this like CIA NSA corporation? Like, was this part of the agreement that at some point, as in exchange for being this person, getting all this money, becoming a billionaire, becoming an oligarch, he would have 5 years, 8 years of like a good life with lots of money and all the celebrity fame and everything. And then after that, he would go through like a 5-year process where they would start removing his organs and turning him into a robot. and taking out his brain and doing these things to him? Like, is this part of the deal that he gets so that, you know, then he's like, they don't have to worry that he's going to betray them or something?
Possibly. I did find a video about Zuckerberg in his private time. I guess he was talking about. Interesting.
I mean, I think that's pretty
that's Mark
conclusive.
Zuckerberg.
That's pretty conclusive evidence, right? That's just like the evidence I presented the other day about Camilla destroying the economy. I mean, that's basically at this point it's proven 100%.
Yeah, 100%. She crashed her car, motorcade, so she obviously crashed the economy. Trump is right as usual, and I think Trump did call he called out Zuckerberg as a robot, I believe. Let me go see if I can find the clip.
And that's probably on Truth Social, which would mean it's 100% factual, right? Because it's in the name.
Exactly.
Plus, we have the evidence, we have the video, so you know we've got the proof.
Hold on, let me look him up. You have anything to add, Adam?
You can get the clip where Zuckerberg says, "When I was a human, I am a human. When I was a human back then, which I am today, but then I thought this." That was a weird thing. You can say it's just a slip of the tongue, a slip of the mind, an accident. But I've never ever talked about myself like that.
I mean, come on, people do this all the time. Remember when Joe Biden said he doesn't need to campaign because he's got the largest vote rigging campaign on the history of the planet, or he said he's going to take out Donald Trump, you know, and don't worry, I don't need to campaign. We're going to take him out, you know.
And we're going to take out Nord Stream. Just one more point on Zuckerberg, actually. Comparing him to Bezos, you look at Zuckerberg and he maintains the same dork. He's a multi-billionaire, one of the richest people in the world. He maintains the same dorky physique. Even recently, he's grown a bit of a beard, allegedly did some cage fighting or trained for it. And he's still got the same dorky physique, as opposed to Jeff Bezos, who's on TRT and he's looking... It just
Can
kind
you
of
share that photo? Share that photo with the people viewing. Your literary descriptions are very good and all, but it would be very good to get a visual on that. Can you share it with the chat, please?
Oh,
well, do we want like a full body shot, like from head to toe? Like how much can we how much can we display on here?
I don't know, man. The overlords might shut us down, man. You know, they've already.
I heard there's a lot to see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's too much. You know, maybe you know, it's like a classified secret, and they're trying to hide it from the public.
Very possibly.
The weirdest physique is that of Elon Musk. His chest looks very weird.
Well,
Yeah.
Elon doesn't go outside.
Oh, really?
Elon stays inside all day. He doesn't get the sun. But yeah, you see him in Greece. And his
Adam, I have a question. I have a question, Adam. We're kind of wondering, are you a robot?
Why?
I don't know. Just wondering.
Okay.
Well, he could
no.
be. I mean, I see a wire. There's a wire connected to a device attached to his like head, and that could be the power cord for Adam. Who knows?
I mean, because we're not sure, because you could very well be a reincarnation of a alleged cult leader from Waco.
I have been accused of being a cult leader. It was a deranged allegation, but
they usually are. They usually are.
It exists. Okay,
So with the cult
I've
leader,
posted a number of just photos of Zuckerberg through the years on the Gonzalo Lira chat, and I'm going to see if I can get some that really showcase his physique.
let me go ahead. While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and play a video of Trump calling Zuckerberg a robot.
The picture wasn't altered. At first they said it was altered, and then they said, no, it was a bug, it was a mistake.
Mark
So my
Zuckerberg-
point is these companies would not allow any information out about what happened.
So Mark Zuckerberg called me. First of all, he called me a few times. He called me after the event, and he said that was really amazing. It was very brave. And, you know, and he actually announced he's not going to support a Democrat because he can't, because he respected me for what I did that day. I think what I did maybe was to me, it was a normal response. But I was called by Mark Zuckerberg yesterday, the day before, on this same subject. And he actually apologized. He said they made a mistake, et cetera, and they're correcting the mistake. Google, nobody called from Google.
That is interesting. I mean, Trump admitted it. I mean, he said that he was a robot, and they made a mistake. I don't know what that mistake is exactly, but I guess Zuckerberg is a robot. Yes.
Do you think this is also tied into another thing that, because Donald Trump, he's one of these famous whistleblowers, and he also blew the whistle on the fact that Obama's like, I think he said not born in the USA, maybe not even born on planet Earth. Is this correct?
Are you talking about Obama or are you talking about Zuckerberg?
Yeah, Donald Trump was saying Obama wasn't born in the USA and maybe not even on planet Earth.
That is interesting. Could you
and
think
that therefore he's ineligible? Well, he might be an alien. I mean, I did hear that. I mean, people were saying that he might not be an American. He might be an illegal alien.
He was saying that he was born in Libya or something like that, some Middle Eastern country. That Obama wasn't. Go ahead.
Because we get Zuckerberg, being a robot, Musk, man of oak, possibly being an android of some type, wanting to put microchips in everybody's brain, and Obama being an actual space alien. These are very interesting. And Trump called them all out, did he not, on True Social? We know it's true because if he's posted on True Social that Zuckerberg is a robot, Elon Musk, man of oak, is an android, and Obama is a space alien, it's got to be true. I mean, seriously.
Well, I mean, it is because I'm a MAGA person. I support MAGA. I support Donald Trump, and if Donald Trump says it's the case, then I don't. I mean, I don't have anything otherwise to indicate that this isn't the case.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on it, Adam?
I think Zuckerberg's a very weird individual. And,
so what do you mean by individual? Because robots. You're saying like these people, like robots are people too, are they not?
Possibly not. At the moment, I wouldn't say robots are people. They may have the potential to ascend to peoplehood one day. I do think primates, especially great primates like orangutans, deserve more rights than they currently have. And I think some humans deserve less rights than they currently have. And I think human rights should be respected more than they are. So, it's a very nuanced question. I think Bezos is a bad dude, but I think he's a real person. I posted a picture of his physique and his.
Post it to the comment section. I'll bring it right up. Now, the question about Bezos being a bad dude. I mean, the thing is that Musk and Bezos have started their own private space programs. I'm wondering if they're basically using those space programs to reunite Obama to the mothership, because Obama is stuck here for some reason, because he's like lost from his alien civilization apparently. So I think that they're trying to find some way of reuniting him with his alien race. Do you think that's possible?
Yes.
What do you think?
I think not only is it possible, but it's also potentially probable. And I say potentially probable because it's kind of hard to gauge like how probable this is or isn't. But I do think there's a lot to it, and I think that not only are robots humans, I think that robots, depending on, because I think a lot of people, they don't understand, right? A lot of robots, they're natural conservatives. Okay, so in the MAGA movement, we need to embrace LGBTQ people. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of LGBTQ people are natural conservatives. A lot of immigrants are natural conservatives. A lot of aliens are natural conservatives, but also robots are natural conservatives. And so if you have a robot or an alien or an LGBTQ person and they believe in like traditional, say they're like a homosexual, they believe in traditional homosexuality, they've got traditional values, I think that, you know, we can't turn those people away. I think that we need to embrace this because as fellow people in the MAGA movement, I mean, you know, we need to strive towards victory. And, you know, the only way we're going to do this is if we get everyone on board. You know, a lot of these people that, you know, they're born in America, maybe they're born as a biological human, or they're cisgender, you know, they don't share our beliefs, you know, and that makes them less American than, say, some robot from outer space.
Interesting. So the question that I have, follow me. Do you think quite possibly Trump is a time traveler? Like, do you think that he might possibly be from the future, and be, you know, that he was sent back here for some type of project, or you know, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's highly possible. I think it's highly possible that this is just like the movie Terminator, and he was sent back in time by the white hats to help us fight against the black hats. You know, the aliens, the robots, you know, the enemies of humanity, which, you know, some of which are more American than actual people that were, you know, descended from the Mayflower. But yeah, I think maybe he is. Maybe he's been sent as sort of a messianic, like prophetic. Like maybe this is almost like Christianity 3.0.
I can verify that this might be possible. I saw a video like a year ago. It was a person being detained by the police, and he was praying to Donald Trump to be delivered from his persecution. His Donald Trump, please help me. He was saying, is certainly it's developed some sort of affinity for recognizing him as some sort of divine entity. It's interesting.
They're not after Trump, they're after you. They just need to go through Trump. But it's okay because Trump is made of the. I listened to him himself. He says he's the fastest healer regenerating tissue ever. He got shot in the head. He says, "No, I just nipped the top of my ear. You can hardly. You look up close, you can maybe see some scar tissue just on the tippity top at the back, but not my ear looks fine because I'm the fastest here. I'm the best."
What about, like, because he had some type of issue with his hand. If I could go look it up, hand. It's just very interesting.
That it shook the. Oh, there's something interesting about that. There's videos of him in previous presidential debates in which he was drinking water, but when he was drinking water, like he lifted the glass with one hand, and then he brought forth his other hand and was drinking the glass with two hands, which was odd.
Yeah.
I think that's very powerful.
Is that Zuck drinking water like this? And taking like a little sippity sip, but not really.
I think that Donald Trump was actually dodging the bullet. I think the media is downplaying the fact that he's this prophetic figure. You know, it's almost like there's a higher power whispering into his head, and you know he's able to, you know, maneuver his head in a way so that, you know, it misses, right? And this is straight out of the Matrix. I mean, we saw this in the Matrix. This is something also Neo could do, and Neo was also like a prophet. So, you know, I think this just sort of reinforces the idea that, you know, I mean, being able to dodge bullets and things like this, I mean, this is quite a sort of a powerful technique that he has.
If that shooter had a direct line of sight on Trump, and he did, Trump had a direct line of sight on that shooter. I've seen video footage from over there, and you can clearly see him. So I think Trump made the calculation in his head. I'm about to be shot. I can hear his heartbeat. I can see that he's lining up the shot. I need to survive this. How? And he goes, all right. And he times it perfectly. Looks to the right, shot in the ear, just enough to graze it, get some blood. But, you know, enough that just the tippity tip of the ear, such that after a week it's regenerated. It can only be superhuman abilities. Probably.
Can we?
Mhm.
Can we pull up the video? Sorry, I'll go back to you. But can we pull up the video of what was it? George Bush dodging the shoe in Iraq, because it reminds me of that. I mean, it's the exact same phenomena, right? Like, you know, I mean, maybe he's even copying that technique from George Bush.
Yeah, give me a few seconds. I'll pull it up.
So sorry, back to you, Adam.
No, it's just he's got to be on some kind of like NZT drug, divine possession, divine protection, maybe the ghost of Shinzo Abe. I don't know.
Yeah, look at that technique.
And isn't that's exactly the same? That's exactly the same technique Donald Trump used. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to throw this out. Maybe it's prophetic. Maybe this is also something that they train all of the presidents in the Secret Service, because this could be part of the Secret Service defense training. Like, we don't have access to their defense manuals, but there's a lot of people, they think they're experts because they've read Wikipedia. But this might be something they spend a lot of effort and time and energy on to develop these skills and techniques. Because the same technique, it can stop bullets, it can stop shoes, it can stop a lot of things. Maybe even if they're about to be ran over by a car, they could use the same sort of head movement, and they could just sort of lean away from it and avoid being like ran over.
Possible. Yeah. What do you think, Adam?
I think Trump went like this, not. But I don't want to in any way contradict Lupita's insights. So
I think it's just a variation of the same technique. It's just, you know, there's different stances. It's kind of like Kung Fu. It's all sort of one thing, right? It's all one technique.
Look at the latest comment, Lupiter. Somebody commented something.
Can we bring this comment up, Red Pill?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, you say this, right? But have you ever tried dodging a bullet?
Yeah, have you ever tried?
Because I don't know, this guy's speaking. This guy might be speaking out of his ass, or he might be speaking out of experience. I mean, I don't know the details.
I've dodged shoes, not yet bullets, but
my friend from Canada was saying that Trump, like, when the bullet was shot, he did like this kind of head movement, and he put his hand on his head very, like, extremely fast. He's saying that at that specific moment, Trump had a very small blade attached to his hand, and he used it to cut his ear. So like the whole thing was like staged from within. But I don't know, that might be too much for some people.
I think it was. I haven't heard that theory. My understanding is it was seemed to be facilitated by the Secret Service to be allowed to occur, and that's. I think bullets were fired, and Trump seemed to be bleeding, so seemed to be shot. And they say yes, he was shot. That's never been in doubt. So.
I mean, we have an expert video analysis here of how to dodge bullets and like confiscate guns and stuff. The technique looks like they're slap fighting. Interesting. Let me get the audio.
I mean, maybe this is some part of the technique. Maybe you need to learn the hand thing before you can move the head part. You know, where you dodge bullets. You know, you're going to dodge the hand. But I mean, my question is, like, do we think like So who do we think was behind this? Because, you know, we've kind of like got to the truth that like Donald Trump, he's like this whistleblower. He's like revealing the fact that like Obama's an alien. He's revealing the fact that like the Facebook dude, Mark Zuckerberg, he's like a robot. Maybe they're trying to take him out. Maybe this is the robot alien faction, you know, trying to take him out.
So the commenter from Twitch has said, "I like that theory actually because blading is something that was done in wrestling, and Trump is technically in the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, he is good friends with what's his name, Ed McMahon, and we saw Hulk Hogan was presented Trump to the RNC, you know, in his political theater. It reminded me of Idiocracy with Camacho, you know, addressing Congress. It was rather humbling experience to say the least. Maybe Trump learned the technique from his time wrestling in the WCW. Because they're like Superman. They're acrobatic. They do like a lot of acrobatic things.
That's exactly what my friend from Canada was also pointing out. Trump is a professional actor, and he's dealt with. He's been in that world before.
Yeah, let me pull up some Trump techniques from WCW days when he was a wrestler, professional wrestler.
I mean, what I don't know is why they didn't just have the stunt man, you know, his double just get shot. You know, because I mean, that would have been a better story, right? They're like, oh, look at him. Oh, look, he's definitely dead. You know, he's 100% dead. And then he's like, you know, that like he pays his barber like $50,000 a year for or something, where they just comb it endlessly until you've got like he's got like instead of having like 5 million pieces of hair, he's got like 50 pieces of hair, and they just keep combing it. And all of the hair that you're seeing is the only 50 pieces of hair on his head, and it's all like cemented into place with like NASA space technology.
It's very possible. There's a picture of his the technology that you're describing. Like I said, I don't know. You understand? Like he's now sponsored by by Elon Musk, and Elon Musk is spaceman, and quite might possibly be an android. So I mean, I imagine they have some type of like scientific technique to. It's crazy, man.
I mean,
like,
we don't know.
Yeah.
Elon Musk might be neutral in this. He might be just trying to like de-escalate the situation by sending the aliens and robots to like another planet.
This is true. Yeah, we don't know. The question I have is how do we tie this? Like, what do you like? Because I mean, we are getting some interesting stuff, some interesting theories that some might possibly might be true. Like, you know, Zuckerberg being a robot, and the Man of Oak possibly might be a android or something. I think he actually said he was an android, so we can you know put that as fact. But do you think that this new type, this capitalist or new type of capitalist system, or this multinational type of system that we're developing, is headed towards some type of Star Trek type alliance, and like, you know, space aliens or communist? Because we did talk, Looper, we did talk about this. We did talk a little bit about this in a previous podcast about you know, representation of the space alien race, and like how like they're affecting the global economy in the United States with global warming, and there might be global warming and other planets, and they're like coming here to use us as an experiment to see like what's going on with their global climate change. Yeah.
This interstellar intergalactic solidarity has been pushed through the media since the 1960s, or at least the 1970s, with the whole like Star Wars saga, with the whole Star Trek. They were putting like this alien-like creatures that looked very weird, very bug-like. I was telling Lupiter about it, and they are trying to build this it's beyond interracial, it's interspecies solidarity. So it's like humanism extends beyond just all races, all peoples. We are all united. We're all one humanity. It's like now we're all one life form. We all have DNA. It's very weird.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
I was thinking, like, like I said, we have the fair game, and this is a race of capitalists that encompass the Star Trek universe, and it might actually quite possibly be. They might actually exist. They might actually be the spearheads of the current global capitalist society that we have today. Like they have the. I'm not really familiar with Star Trek, so anybody the Star Trek you guys watching, I really apologize if I screw it up. There are probably people that know a lot more than I do, but I believe they have like a code of acquisition. I'm gonna go ahead and bring it up and show this code of acquisition they use.
And I believe that they have people whose job it is to study this code, and they've got like entire institutions, and there are people, and all they do is they study this code, and they like kind of educate. They're like it's kind of like the spiritual leaders of these communities.
Yes. I wonder what Adam's view is on the code. I forget what it's called, code of acquisitions and space aliens, and how this like is entwined into modern economics.
Not only that, but I heard there was a movie called They Live, and it was very similar to this, and it was like the same sort of concept that you're describing. How perhaps these people live among us, right? They live among us, and in order to see them, right, you would need to have special glasses, and you put these special glasses on, and you could see through their disguise, and they would look like these horrible, disgusting monsters, right? But without these glasses, they would kind of just look like normal people.
Well, the thing is I just found a University of Idaho. This is published in University of Idaho Academia, in their Department of Business or Business Economics, and they have the I can't. I'm really bad with names, guys. Farragut rules of acquisition. That's what it's called, rules of acquisition, and they have a list of 286 different rules that the Farragut they abide by in their rules of acquisition for capitalism, for globe for galactic capitalism, if you will. So rule number one: once you have their money, never give it back. That's the first rule of acquisition. Number three: spend more or never spend more for an acquisition than you have to. And then number six: never allow family to stand in the way of opportunity. Number seven: keep your ears open. Number nine: opportunity plus instinct equals profit. And number 10: greed is eternal. These are very important rules for acquisition and galactic capitalism.
And I think this is like, this is kind of like our 10 commandments. We have 10 commandments in the West, and that's not to say that there are only 10 rules. Of course, there's a lot more than 10 rules, but those are like the basic rules to start off with, right? And then you can get into sort of the nuances, the details, and all the other sort of stuff. And just like us, I suspect that maybe these are like these are just the basic 268 rules. I mean, you got to understand commerce is a lot more complicated than Christianity. So, there's a lot of rules and regulations right now in the US and in every sort of economic zone. And so it makes sense that they have a few more than 10, and they probably have, another like 268 million rules and regulations. But, there's also probably another set of books that they have where these are just books commenting on the other books, about the rules and regulations. Just like, today we have in sort of our life, we have regulations and then we have case law. So they probably have, arguments as to how to get around these rules, how to circumvent these rules, when these rules do and don't apply, and how to use these rules to your advantage. Because it's one thing to know the rule, it's another thing to be able to really take advantage of the rule.
Yep.
Professor,
I heard
you're
they.
on mute.
Oh, is he?
I'm here. Sorry, I'm just saying. Like I pulled up Farragine's complete rules of acquisition, and they use gold as their form of currency as part of their culture, and it seems like we're talking about sound currency or sound money, and it resorts back to that galactically, universally gold is the primary source of currency and trade and acquisition. So I find that quite interesting. Maybe our current economic model in the West is based off of this Farragy rules of acquisition, but ours isn't as you understand. This is a space race of people, so they're probably a lot more advanced intellectually and technologically than we are. So their idea of their concepts of capitalism is probably much substantially more efficient and more evolved than ours, our human type interaction. I mean, especially with like robot races, and you have the android races, and then the different types of species. Because like I said, there's not just.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I would assume that they also have some secret books as well. I mean, these are just the rules they're telling us about. But, obviously, like any sort of organization, they're going to have trade secrets, right? And these are, very sort of insular, mercantile type of people. So they're not going to they've probably got some sort of secret protocols of the Ferengi, coalition or something.
I did find something on the internet, and they're discussing here I guess this is the rules of acquisition. So they actually have like a tablet of all the rules and stuff. So like, and from what I understand, if you watch the Star Trek show, they have 386 rules, but like they don't actually list all of them. So I think it's kind of like trade secret. So there probably are a lot of like, if we go back here, this is all like from the University of Idaho that had written all of the different acquisitions down that they did disclose. There's a lot missing here, and they just gave us pretty much the first like 76, and it's all just a bunch of different rules. So I mean, out of the 286, we only have like maybe a tenth of it. So there's probably more stuff out there that we don't know about. I mean, they have stuff in here like civil defense. Rule number 75. Home is where the heart is, but the stars are made of lithium. Lithium. Latinium. I guess it's an element. I don't know. Let me see.
Lantium,
they have a different...
Latinum was their currency, as I'm reading.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, that's interesting because I was going to say, with the currency, I mean, I suspect strongly that they have, that they're very willing to trade and buy and sell with fiat currency, but they like to store their wealth in something more substantial than that. But I wonder, maybe they have one set of rules for themselves for, doing business, say, with themselves, banking with themselves, that sort of thing. And maybe there's, another set of rules that they have for trading with other people outside of their group.
Well, if you look at rule number 17, a contract is a contract is a contract, but only between Ferengi.
Number 17.
Well, that's very interesting.
Here it is. Yeah, a contract is a contract is a contract, but only between Ferengi. Yeah. Body parts is what they listed in University of Idaho. They said body parts. I don't know. Maybe that is where that's the episode that they got it from. Because if you know, like if you watch cinema, like you watch the movie what was it called, Galaxy Quest, and Galaxy Quest, the spoiler alert, it's basically these Trekkie type people, and they have this crew, and then like they find out that everything's actually real, and that all of the like stuff in the show is actually based off of like a real alien race. And for all we know, like Star Trek actually might be real, and there might be robots among us, and aliens among us, and Ferengi among us that we don't know about. I mean, like I said, because I definitely think that Zuckerberg is a robot. And that's we've got all the evidence here to say that there is something nefariously going on, and that Zuckerberg's definitely a robot. Trust the science.
Rule number 94. females and finances don't mix.
What was it? Number what? 94?
94. Yeah, I'm trying to find a rule about fiat for the non-Ferengi.
Oh, okay.
And I do think that might be the case, because in Star Trek, you have there's this concept where you don't make contact and you don't intervene in other cultures until they reach a certain point of development. And I just think maybe the aliens are waiting for us to defeat the demon rats. Because right now, there's like a civil war for the future of America. You have the white hats on one side, which are the Republicans. You have the black hats, the evil people, on the other side, which are the Democrats. And I think, maybe when we defeat the Democrats, we'll reach a point of technological, societal, like evolutionary sophistication, that then we can have first contact with aliens. And we can be welcomed into the Galactic Federation.
That sounds... I think it's very plausible. We've got a comment here again from Twitch. I've gone out of a lot of limbs though, thought-wise, but Star Trek might be real. Feels too far, even for me. Okay, interesting.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we fit right in, right? Like there's that. We reviewed some of the other channels the other day on here. We have channels like, what was that X-22 guy? We have channels like the Mexican talking about how there were like force fields and something involved in the assassination attempt. I mean, I feel like we're right on the target for this platform.
We're very right on the target for the platform of Rumble, because like we are talking about real things that really matter, real topics like, Adam Smith and modern capitalism and trade that affects everybody in the world. And also we're talking about Zuckerberg quite possibly being a robot. So these are very important key things for the Rumble channel. And we're talking about Ferengi and Star Trek, and this is very important for the Twitch channel. And most importantly for our followers on LinkedIn, we're talking about sound economics and about jobs. So that's important, and networking.
And we're bringing reputable sources from reputable organizations. Like, what was the university that we're getting this academic literature
University
from?
of Idaho. University of Idaho has published Ferengi rules of acquisition in detail, and they've given sources and where they received them, and they have studies in their economics at the University of Economics that they study the rules of Ferengi, because it's very important how they relate to modern capitalism.
And this is one of the most reputable institutions in Idaho, and therefore one of the most reputable organizations, institutions in America and the planet as a whole, right? So we're talking about some very high level stuff from, a top 500 university.
Actually, I think let's go look up the ranking, but I believe that Idaho is a first tier university, and they might actually be ranked higher than that.
I've read through 285 Ferengi rules of acquisition, and I was unable to find anything explicitly about fiat currency. However, there are, you can piece together 5 rules or so, and you can justify fiat currency for non-Ferengi, I suppose.
Interesting. So University of Idaho is ranked number 23 for best value schools. So that it literally is it's a very good school. It is what it is. Because if you go there, look, it's ranked number 101 for top public schools, and I got pop-ups going up here. It's ranked number 185 for national universities. I mean, it's like the Harvard. It's like the Harvard of the West Coast. Of the Upper Midwest. So
And when you think about it, when it comes to university, the first course you do, what's the first course you do, no matter what subject it is, no matter what topic it is? What's the first course in any university?
Economics?
It's called 101. Whatever it is,
101.
the code name of the subject, 101. That's right. So this is the 101. This is the official of all the universities in the world, rank 101. So what are they telling us? They're telling us that if we want to learn something, don't go to Harvard, don't go to Stanford, don't go to MIT, don't quote any of these organizations, don't quote Princeton, Yale, Harvard, etc., etc. What we need is we need to go to the University of Idaho, 101, rank 101.
100%. 110%. 101%. 101%.
And we need to make sure we're getting quality studies. Okay, so what does that mean? We're talking about qualitative. Okay, where does qualitative come from? It comes from the word quality, whereas quantitative is about quantity. And it's not about quantity, it's not about the size, it's not about numbers, guys, it's about the quality of the numbers. Or in the case that you have no numbers at all, it's just about quality as a whole. And it's always better to go for a smaller, shorter study that's got more quality in it than to go for something with a bunch of numbers that no one can understand. Because let's face it, right? Numbers are hard, numbers are confusing, and most of the time we don't even need numbers.
You know, I've actually unlocked the like that proves our theory. There's evidence to support that it's quite possible that Trump is a Farragut. This is empirical evidence. We now know that he is a space alien. Trump is a space alien.
Well, he's also red, right? Like he's got the same exact pigmentation as these people.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. When we were doing the image for the Kamala effect, and like we were using red backgrounds, and we were like, no, we can't use red because it's like, you know, their faces are very red because these are space aliens. So we were like, we want to use blue, and then I was like, we can't use blue because it clashes with the, you know, the attire, because Trump wears blue ties and Kamala wears blue dresses and pants coats, or you know, yeah. Anyway, so like I had to like mess with the background a little bit, but it is interesting. Like I said, it's very possible that Kamala actually might be a space alien too.
Well, hopefully, because we need to like fix America, and who's better to fix America than the Ferengi? Because they're very good with other people's money. So why wouldn't they be very good with our money?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Adam, you have anything to say on it, or are you still with us?
I have nothing to comment.
Okay. I think we're gonna wrap it up. We've gone to almost 3 hours. I appreciate Adam for joining us, Swede, as well, and co-host Looper. It's been a very interesting Saturday night, or Saturday evening, or Saturday morning, or Sunday morning if you're down under. Yeah, interesting stuff. Zuckerberg's he's a robot. Go ahead.
In the name of my hero, Spock, which is totally a real character, peace and so on and so forth be with you. Long live the Galactic Federation, etc., etc., etc.
Exactly. That being said, stay tuned, like and subscribe on the Rumble. So that you can see future podcasts, and when we go live, it'll give you notification.
And guys,
as well as on Twitch. Go ahead.
Make sure to give us your useless human dollars before the Galactic Federation's currency is brought in, because once the Galactic Federation's currency is brought in, it's not going to be worth anything. It's just going to be a bunch of useless paper. So just give it all to us now while you still can. And then when the galactic currency comes in, you get galactic credits and you get your universal UBI, as everyone in the Galactic Federation has. Then you can thank us later.
Exactly. Any closing arguments or closing comments, Adam?
I think this stream we went through a lot of kind of esoteric knowledge about modern capitalism, that the system we live in today is flawed. It's not what we've been sold. There's deep, dark secrets, and the solution is not socialism, UBI. It's actually to oppose the state and their state systems of oppression. That these, to threaten you financially is to threaten your livelihood, is to threaten your life. What these people are doing are sick. It is intentional, deliberate, and it hurts real people purposefully.
Good insight. Good insight. I like it. Sweet. You still with us, brother? Got any closing arguments or comments you want to say to the fans, our followers, before we descend into figuring out our spacecraft to get off this planet?
I believe we have touched upon a lot of stuff. We've gone through the whole economic spectrum, done a very deep analysis on all of these different processes that are going on worldwide, and it's not looking good in many areas. But there's still some stuff that can be done, as Libiter mentioned, for young people. Again, they should consider to follow their own endeavors and not to be led by working for other people, because frankly that doesn't have too much of a way out nowadays, unless you're in like a high specialty field. Now, moving beyond that, yeah, Trump might be all of these people in Mark Zuckerberg and the like. They have some weird stuff about themselves. Trump looks very orange indeed. There's some very fishy stuff. We will probably get into a lot more into this stuff later in other streams. But yeah, it's been a pleasure being with you tonight. And yeah, we'll see you another day.
Yeah, definitely. Lupiter, any closing arguments or comments?
Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried is totally not a reference to computer banks. We'll see you guys later. Good night.
Good night, guys. Remember, buy some e-bikes, buy me a coffee, buy us a coffee, buy a coffee for your neighbor, buy a coffee for a homeless guy on the street. Stay tuned for the next podcast, and I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, whenever the hell you watch this. Good night.